Tonight we enter the dry silence of southern Mesopotamia, where buried tablets began changing history during the 19th centuries. Archaeologists working among ruined cities uncovered thousands of clay fragments, each pressed with wedge-shaped marks before being hardened by accident, fire, or deliberate baking. Scholars from the British Museum, the University of Pennsylvania, and Oxford later studied these records, revealing stories older than many familiar religious traditions. The tablets spoke of kings, floods, temples, divine councils, and powerful beings called the Anunnaki. Yet the oldest texts do not offer a simple explanation. They leave fragments. They leave names without biographies, rituals without full context, and stories copied centuries after their earliest forms appeared. That incompleteness creates the quiet mystery you are about to enter, because broken evidence invites careful scholarship, but it also invites imagination. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. You can also share your location and local time below. Perhaps you are listening beneath summer rain, beside a quiet window, or under the pale glow of a sleeping city. Now let the modern room around you begin to fade. The air grows warmer, carrying dust, river mud, and the faint bitterness of smoke from dried reeds. Beneath your feet, the ground feels packed and cracked, yet somewhere nearby, water moves through a narrow canal, frogs stir among the banks, insects hum above the marshes. Farther away, cattle shift inside reed enclosures, while a dog barks once, then settles again. You stand on the edge of an ancient settlement. Its buildings are not marble palaces, despite what later imagination may prefer. Most walls are shaped from mud brick, repaired repeatedly beneath a sun that dries everything and preserves almost nothing. Roofs sag under reeds and plaster. Courtyards hold grinding stones, storage jars, baskets, and small clay figurines whose meanings remain uncertain. Above these homes rises a temple platform. It is broad, heavy, and strangely commanding. Workers carry baskets of earth up its sloping sides. Priests move through shaded chambers. Administrators count barley, wool, fish, oil, and labour. Civilization here does not appear suddenly through magic. It grows through irrigation, cooperation, argument, exhaustion, and a heroic amount of record-keeping. The earliest Mesopotamian writing developed largely from practical needs. Clay tablets tracked grain, livestock, property, workers, and offerings. Records confirm that temple institutions helped organize economic life within emerging cities. A mark pressed into wet clay could preserve a debt, assign a ration, or identify who had delivered several jars of oil. Then writing began preserving something more elusive. Scribes recorded hymns, laments, royal claims, school exercises, myths, and prayers. The same technology used to count sheep eventually described the structure of heaven. Humanity, it seems, required only a few centuries to move from bookkeeping toward cosmic anxiety. Among the divine names appearing in those records are the Anunnaki. The word does not identify a single ruler, species, or fixed group with an unchanging purpose. Across different places and periods, it refers to a collective of deities associated with divine authority, ancestry, judgment, and the ordering of the cosmos. Their roles shift because Mesopotamian religion itself changes across centuries. A god honoured in one city might hold a different position elsewhere. A story copied in a later age might rearrange older relationships. Scribes inherited traditions, adapted them, and occasionally disagreed with one another, which feels surprisingly familiar. The Anunnaki are therefore difficult to place inside a neat chart. Some texts connect them with the great gods who determine destinies. Others place them within the underworld, where they appear as judges or solemn powers. Their number also varies. At times they seem numerous, while other compositions speak of a smaller divine assembly. There is no surviving master tablet explaining everything. This absence has encouraged a modern fringe belief that the Anunnaki were visitors from another world who altered early humanity. According to that interpretation, divine titles become technological ranks, temples become machines, and creation myths become concealed accounts of genetic engineering. It is a powerful modern story. It is also far more specific than the ancient evidence allows. The original tablets do not describe laboratories, spacecraft, or genetic science in recognizable terms. Such ideas arise through recent reinterpretations, often built from selective translations and connections that professional specialists do not accept. Still, the popularity of the theory reveals something important about the modern mind. You live in an age shaped by technology. When ancient people describe beings descending from heaven, granting knowledge, or creating humanity, your imagination may naturally supply aircraft, scientists, and advanced visitors. A person living 3,000 years ago might instead imagine radiance, storms, sacred mountains, or royal courts. Every age furnishes mystery with familiar furniture. The scholarly debate is quieter and more demanding. Historians continue discussing how divine group names developed, how older Ural's traditions entered written literature, and how much regional variation existed beneath official temple texts. Some researchers emphasize political theology, others examine ritual language, scribal education, or links between city identity and divine hierarchy. These discussions do not produce one dramatic answer. They produce layers. You begin to see the tablet not as a window made from perfect glass, but as a shard found beneath collapsed walls. It reveals a narrow view, yet the edges remain broken. Behind every translated line stand lost performances, vanished gestures, and assumptions that ancient listeners understood without explanation. Consider a hymn spoken inside a temple courtyard. The gathered people know which god receives the words. They recognize the festival season, the clothing, the incense, and the meaning of each procession. The scribe records only part of that world, thousands of years later. You receive the text without the music, setting, or shared memory. Something essential has disappeared, yet something remains. A divine council gathers, great powers establish order, kings claim legitimacy through heavenly favour, humans cultivate fields, maintain shrines, and offer food to beings who require devotion while promising protection. Through these recurring patterns, the Anunnaki emerge not as clearly described characters, but as members of a larger sacred system. That system mirrors human society. The gods have ranks, households, servants, rivalries, and responsibilities. They hold assemblies and issue decisions. They grant authority and withdraw it. Their world resembles the palace, temple, and city, enlarged until it reaches the stars. Perhaps this resemblance is the first blueprint, not a biological design hidden inside human blood, but a social design projected across the universe. The divine realm explains why rulers command, why workers labour, why temples receive wealth, and why order must be defended against chaos. Yet even that interpretation remains incomplete. Myth rarely serves one purpose. A creation story can explain ritual while also exploring suffering. A divine council can support kingship while preserving memories of older communities. A flood account can legitimize authority while expressing fear of real environmental disaster. The clay holds many meanings at once. As darkness settles across the river plain, lamps begin glowing inside doorways. Their flames tremble in shallow dishes of oil. Somewhere within the temple complex, a scribe bends over wet clay, pressing signs with a cut reed. He does not know you will read them. He does not imagine museums, electric lights, or scholars comparing fragments across continents. He writes for his own world, perhaps copying an older composition from a damaged tablet beside him. His hand moves carefully because one mistake may alter a divine name. As outside the night deepens, stars spread above the flat horizon with startling clarity. The temple platform becomes a dark shape against the sky, joining earth and heaven through architecture, ceremony, and belief. You remain beside it, listening. The Anunnaki are present only through names, titles, and incomplete stories. Their silence is not proof of hidden technology, yet neither is it empty. It contains the distance between ancient intention and modern desire. Within that distance, a question begins forming. Were these beings simply gods shaped by human society, or did their stories preserve older memories that even the scribes no longer understood? The tablet offers no final answer. It rests beneath your imagined hand, cool now beneath the Mesopotamian night, carrying marks made by someone whose world has vanished. Each sign preserves a voice, but never the entire conversation. And in that partial silence, the mystery opens. Your feet sink slightly into damp soil beside a narrow canal, where reeds bend beneath the morning breeze. The horizon appears almost empty, yet the plain is already crowded with human intention. Small channels divide fields into patient rectangles. Mud walls hold back water. Wooden gates guide the current toward barley, flax, onions, and date palms. Nothing here feels inevitable. The land offers abundance, but only when people cooperate across seasons. Rivers shift their courses without warning. Floods arrive unevenly. Summer heat hardens exposed ground until it cracks beneath the sandals. A neglected canal fills with silt, and an entire neighborhood may lose its harvest. Communities survive through constant maintenance. You hear wooden tools cutting into mud, baskets scrape along embankments. Someone calls across the water while workers strengthen a damaged bank with reeds and pack clay. Their labor seems ordinary, yet these repeated actions slowly reshape the landscape. Civilization grows through such gestures. Archaeological research from the University of Chicago has shown that southern Mesopotamian settlements developed across long periods of expansion, migration, trade, and environmental adjustment. Cities did not appear overnight as finished designs, villages enlarged, shrines became more elaborate, and administrative habits accumulated across generations. The transformation is slow enough to remain almost invisible. A family builds beside another family, a storage room becomes a shared granary, a meeting place gains a platform, then walls, then ritual importance. Paths become streets because many feet choose the same route. Authority gathers wherever food, water, and decisions gather. You walk toward a settlement raised above the wet ground. Its houses cluster closely, protecting courtyards from wind and glare. Roofs create shaded spaces where grain dries in shallow trays. Clay ovens release the warm scent of bread. Fish hang from lines, while woven mats cover baskets filled with dates. Children carry small jars between doorways. Their world is neither primitive nor simple. Each household depends upon farmers, herders, potters, builders, boatmen, fishers, and traders. A broken irrigation gate can matter more than a distant enemy. A poor harvest can alter marriages, debts, and political loyalties. Social life becomes denser. Some people own larger fields, others manage animals belonging to temples or powerful households. Crafts become specialized because growing communities can support workers who no longer produce all their own food. Potters shape vessels more quickly. Metal workers experiment with copper. Seal makers carve tiny images into stone, producing cylinders that roll scenes across wet clay. These seals identify owners, authorize deliveries, and transform administration into something almost ceremonial. A sealed jar carries more than grain. It carries trust. At the center of the settlement, a sacred building stands on carefully prepared foundations. Its walls may appear modest, yet its position separates it from ordinary homes. Offerings arrive there, disputes may be settled nearby, surplus goods gather within attached rooms. The building anchors memory. Generations rebuild it in nearly the same place. Each reconstruction raises the floor slightly above the ruins beneath. Over centuries, architecture accumulates into a mound, preserving the outlines of vanished rooms within compacted layers. Excavators read those layers like interrupted sentences. At sites connected with the Ubaid period, archaeologists have uncovered long traditions of temple construction, painted pottery, and regional exchange. These findings suggest shared cultural practices across broad areas, though local communities retain distinct identities. No single ruler directs the underworld. Networks form instead. Boats carry bitumen, timber, stone, shells, and metals from distant regions. Southern Mesopotamia lacks many valuable raw materials, so trade becomes essential. Travelers follow rivers, coastlines, and overland paths, linking marsh settlements with mountains and desert margins. News travels with goods. A new style of bowl appears. A foreign stone reaches a workshop. Stories change as they pass between languages and households. Rituals gain unfamiliar details, then become accepted as ancient custom within a few generations. Human beings are wonderfully efficient at inventing tradition. A curious fringe idea proposes that memories of a lost civilization beneath the Persian Gulf influence Mesopotamian origin stories. During colder periods, sea levels were lower, exposing land where communities may have lived. Rising waters eventually covered much of that landscape. The possibility is intriguing. Evidence confirms that shorelines change dramatically, but no discovered underwater metropolis proves the grander claim. Scattered settlement may have existed across exposed plains, yet imagination often supplies towers, kings, and secret knowledge where archaeology offers only uncertainty. Still, drowned landscapes leave powerful memories. A family forced inland by advancing water might preserve stories of abandoned fields and vanished graves. Descendants could transform those memories into tales of sacred homelands destroyed by divine forces. Time reshapes geography into myth. You follow a boat through reed marshes where the distinction between land and water becomes uncertain. Islands appear beneath clustered huts. Buffalo move through shallows. Birds rise in sudden clouds, then settle beyond the next channel. The boatman knows routes without maps. He reads reed growth, current coid, mend, and the colour of water. His knowledge is practical, inherited, and difficult to record. When scholars discuss civilization, such expertise often disappears behind monuments and royal names. Yet survival depends upon it. Researchers continue debating how strongly irrigation encouraged centralized authority. One interpretation argues that large water systems required powerful managers who could organize labor and distribute resources. Another view suggests that local communities controlled many canals without constant direction from kings or temples. The evidence supports several arrangements. Small channels may be managed by families. Larger projects require broader cooperation. Authority probably expands through negotiation, crisis, ritual, and occasional force, rather than through one universal model. The landscape itself encourages complexity. Water must be shared, but sharing invites disagreement. Upstream farmers can divert more than their portion. Downstream fields may dry. Boundaries move when channels shift. Written records eventually become useful because memory alone cannot settle every claim. Administration begins to harden. Tokens represent quantities. Marks identify goods. Standard measures reduce argument. At least briefly, officials count rations and workers, turning human effort into columns of numbers. The process feels almost modern. A person becomes a name, a task, and an allotted portion of barley. The system increases coordination, yet it also makes inequality easier to organize. Those controlling records gain influence over people who cannot read them. Power learns to write. The settlement expands outward, absorbing paths, gardens, workshops, and burial grounds. Walls rise where open fields once began. Crowds gather during festivals. Strangers arrive seeking work or protection. Old relationships weaken under the weight of numbers. In a village, reputation may regulate behavior. In a city, many people remain unknown to one another. Rules become formal, officials become necessary, temples offer shared identity, while rulers promise security and order, the city becomes both shelter and burden. Its inhabitants gain markets, crafts, ceremonies, and stronger defences. They also inherit taxes, labour duties, disease, overcrowding, and the constant attention of administrators. Civilization is rarely polite. You stand beneath a pale sky as dust moves between unfinished walls. Workers lift baskets onto their shoulders. A scribe checks deliveries beside a doorway nearby. A priest watches smoke rise from a small offering. No heavenly architect appears. Instead, countless decisions accumulate until the settlement becomes something its founders could not have imagined. Each generation inherits canals, obligations, sacred places, and unresolved disputes. Each adds another layer. The mystery does not require a sudden miracle. It may rest within the slow transformation itself, where ordinary people create institutions powerful enough to outlive their names. In time, those institutions seem ancient, permanent, and almost divine. Across the plain, more settlements are rising. Their walls remain low, but their ambitions are already immense. In your ears, the soft tapping of a reed stylus becomes the measured heartbeat of an ancient schoolroom. You sit near a plastered wall while young scribes bend over damp clay tablets. Their fingers are stained with dust. Their shoulders ache from repetition. A teacher watches closely, correcting every sign with the patience of someone defending civilization from untidy handwriting. The room smells of wet earth, lamp smoke, and wool. Students copy lists of trees, stones, animals, professions, cities, and gods. They learn words that may already sound old within their own lifetime. Each exercise trains memory, but it also preserves a vision of how the universe is arranged. At the top stand divine powers. Some govern storms, rivers, grain, birth, justice, warfare, wisdom, or the restless underworld. Others protect individual cities, royal families, crafts, or household thresholds. Their identities overlap because divine order is not a tidy collection of separate departments. A single god can wear many faces. Across Mesopotamia, the same divine name may carry different titles in different periods. A local protector can rise into imperial importance when his city becomes powerful. Another deity may absorb the duties of older gods through conquest, political alliance, or theological revision. Religion changes with history. Records preserved in collections associated with Yale University, Oxford University, and the University of Pennsylvania confirm that Mesopotamian scribes copied divine lists across many centuries. These lists arranged names, relationships, titles, and equivalent gods from different traditions. The work was more than devotional. It trained administrators to recognize regional languages and theological systems. It also helped scholars of the ancient world organize a divine population that had become bewilderingly large. The gods required administration too. You watch a student press one name into clay, then another beneath it. The signs appear simple from a distance, yet every wedge carries sound, meaning, and cultural memory. One mark may represent a syllable, an object, or an idea depending upon its setting. Reading becomes an act of judgment. The teacher knows whether a sign indicates heaven, a god, a place, or an action. Modern scholars must recover those distinctions from damaged tablets, uncertain spellings, and languages that stopped being spoken thousands of years ago. A divine name is rarely just a name. It may contain a title, a family connection, or a memory of an older language. A god can be described as father, judge, shepherd, warrior, canal inspector, healer, or keeper of decrees. These descriptions reveal how human society imagines authority. The celestial world resembles a court. Great gods sit in assembly. Messengers travel between them. Decisions are announced. Lesser beings carry out commands. Divine households possess servants, estates, and specialized responsibilities. The arrangement feels familiar because people build heaven from known materials. Yet the divine court is not merely a copy of earthly government, it also gives earthly government sacred meaning. A king does not simply command because soldiers obey him, he claims authority because the gods have selected, blessed, or measured him. Power gains a cosmic accent. Within these traditions, the Anunnaki appear as a collective whose exact membership remains uncertain. The name can suggest the offspring or princely descendants of a high god, though its use varies considerably between compositions. They do not always perform one fixed role. In some literary settings, they gather as prominent divine authorities. In others, they are connected with judgment below the earth. Certain texts speak of them in numbers that feel ceremonial rather than literal. This instability matters. Modern readers often expect characters to retain consistent biographies, like figures in a carefully edited novel. Mesopotamian religion developed through many cities, languages, dynasties, and centuries. Consistency was never guaranteed. A story from one temple could contradict another. The contradiction did not necessarily trouble ancient worshippers. Different accounts might serve different rituals, communities, or political needs. Truth could be layered rather than singular. One city might honor a god as supreme creator, another might assign that honor elsewhere. Both traditions could remain valid within their own sacred landscapes. The gods move with power. When a city rises, its patron deity may receive grander titles. When rulers conquer new territory, scribes sometimes connect foreign gods with familiar ones. Divine families expand, merge, and rearrange themselves. Theology becomes diplomacy. A conquered population can retain its deity while accepting that deity's place beneath the victor's god. Such arrangements soften political change, though they also display who now controls the official story. A council decree proves little about private belief. Ordinary families may pray to personal gods, protective spirits, deceased ancestors, or small household figures ignored by royal inscriptions. A palace text praises universal order, while a mother whispers for a feverish child beside a dim lamp. Both belong to religion. Archaeologists have found small figurines beneath floors, within walls, and near doorways. Some may represent protective beings placed to guard a household. Others remain difficult to interpret because objects rarely explain themselves. One quirky theory claims that certain large-eyed statues depict humans imitating beings with unusually shaped faces. The idea has inspired stories about visitors from distant worlds. The simpler interpretation remains stronger. Wide eyes probably express permanent attention before the divine. The worshipper is shown awake, reverent, and endlessly present inside the sacred space. Yet the statues remain haunting because their fixed gaze survives long after the prayers around them have vanished. They seem to watch time. Your mind drifts toward a temple interior where polished objects catch the trembling light. A priest recites names from memory. Musicians strike strings and drums softly. Smoke rises toward beams darkened by generations of offerings. Each name activates a relationship. A title recalls a city recalls a canal, a ruler, a harvest, or a battle. Divine language holds geography inside it. The god of one place may arrive as a guest in another. His statue travels by boat during ceremonies. Crowds gather along the water, hearing hymns that describe the journey as movement across both landscape and heaven. Sacred statues are treated as living presences. They are washed, clothed, fed, and placed within carefully controlled rooms. The material object is not simply a symbol in the modern sense. Through ritual, it becomes the dwelling place of divine attention. Scholars still debate how ancient people understood that presence. Some historians emphasize that the statue was considered fully inhabited by the deity during ritual. Others suggest a more flexible relationship between image, essence, and sacred representation. The surviving texts do not provide one universal explanation. Ambiguity remains inside the shrine. A worshipper may know that craftsmen carved the statue, yet still believe the god receives food through it. Human hands create the form, while ritual transforms its status. The contradiction feels less strange when you consider ordinary sacred objects. People often know an object is material while treating it as something more. Clay can carry lore, stone can carry memory, a statue can carry a god. The scribes preserve these possibilities by arranging divine names into long sequences. Their lists create order, yet every list also reveals uncertainty. Why record so many equivalents unless traditions had become difficult to reconcile? The act of classification suggests a problem. Gods had accumulated through time, cities had exchanged stories, languages had layered themselves across older languages, titles had multiplied until one divine being might possess dozens of recognizable forms. The scribes respond by building systems. They place fathers above sons, consorts beside one another, servants beneath their masters, and foreign names beside local equivalents. The tablet becomes a map of invisible society. Still, maps simplify. A god who appears obedient within one list may act independently inside a myth. A deity described as minor in one city may dominate another city's festivals. Written order cannot completely contain living belief. You hear the teacher correct a student again. The boy has written a divine title with the wrong sign. He smooths the clay and begins once more. His frustration is quiet, almost ceremonial. Outside, sandals scrape across the courtyard. Someone carries fresh tablets toward the room. Someone else removes hardened copies for storage. The school continues preserving names whose earliest origins are already uncertain. Every copied line extends their life. The gods endure because human hands repeat them. Their immortality depends upon fragile clay, disciplined memory, and institutions willing to teach the same signs across generations. This is the deeper tension within the sublights. They describe beings who command heaven, yet those beings require scribes. Their names survive only when someone presses them into earth. The Anunnaki remain among those names, solemn and difficult to define. They stand within assemblies, judgments, genealogies, and sacred hierarchies, never settling into one simple form. Perhaps that uncertainty is not a flaw. Perhaps it is the truest surviving feature of a religion built from many cities and many centuries. The gods are stable enough to be recognized, yet fluid enough to absorb political change, local memory, and human fear. The stylus lifts. The tablet rests beneath the fading light, crowded with divine names that seem ordered from a distance. Up close, each one opens into another question. For a moment, the air feels colder, although the sun still burns above the city walls. You enter a temple courtyard where white plaster reflects the afternoon glare. Priests cross the paving stones in measured silence, carrying bowls, folded cloth, and small containers of fragrant oil. Beyond them, a dark doorway leads into chambers where only selected attendants may pass. The divine world has its own architecture. Some gods remain close to daylight, storms, fields, and royal power. Others stand nearer to the earth, the dead and the hidden places beneath human memory. The Anunnaki move between these realms with an uncertainty that makes them difficult to define. Their identity changes with the text. In several early traditions, they appear as a broad group of important deities connected with the highest divine order. They may attend assemblies, witness decrees, or stand among powers responsible for maintaining the structure of the world. In later compositions, their presence often darkens. They become associated with the underworld, where they sit as judges or solemn authorities. This does not necessarily mean that their earlier character disappears. Ancient religious traditions often allow one divine group to hold several functions without demanding a single permanent explanation. The sacred world resists tidy filing. You hear a low chant from within the temple. The sound is not melodic in a modern sense. It rises and falls like measured breathing, carrying names and titles through the cool interior. Each title places a deity somewhere. One title may connect a god with ancestry, another may assign authority over judgment, a third may describe participation in a divine council. Through such titles, the Anunnaki take their places within a system that resembles both a family and a government. Genealogy matters greatly. Mesopotamian gods are often organized through descent, marriage, household, and rank. Divine ancestry explains authority in the same way royal ancestry supports human rule. A god possesses power not only through action, but through belonging. The Anunnaki are frequently linked with descendants of the great god Anu, whose name is connected with heaven. Yet this relationship remains less simple than a modern family tree might suggest. Names shift across languages. Titles overlap. Local traditions rearrange parentage. One composition may emphasize heavenly descent, while another places the same group within the underworld. The result feels confusing only when you expect mythology to behave like an official registry. Ancient religion behaves more like memory. It preserves several versions at once. Research conducted through Oxford University and the Oriental Institute at the University of Chicago has helped scholars trace how Mesopotamian divine traditions changed over long periods. Tablets from different cities reveal that divine groups were shaped by local worship, political change, and the copying habits of scribes. The Anunnaki never occupy one fixed office. They belong to a flexible category of sacred authority. Imagine a royal court during a formal judgment. Senior officials gather along the walls, some speak, others remain silent. Yet their presence confirms that the decision carries institutional weight. The Anunnaki often function in this manner. They do not always act as individual personalities. Instead, they appear collectively, lending gravity to divine decisions. Their presence can make a decree feel older, wider, and more binding than the command of a single god. Authority becomes communal. A ruler may issue an order, but a council makes that order seem woven into the cosmos. The same principle appears in earthly government, where witnesses, elders, and officials transform personal power into recognized law. The gods provide a sacred model. You pass beneath a lintel carved with protective symbols. The stone feels cool beneath your fingertips. Inside, a chamber opens around a low platform where offerings once stood. Bread, beer, dates, meat, and incense move through ritual spaces like payments within an invisible economy. The gods receive care. In return, they preserve fertility, health, victory, and order. Yet the dead require attention too. Families pour water, offer food, and speak the names of ancestors. A forgotten dead person may become restless within popular belief. Memory protects both the living and the departed. The Anunnaki sometimes seem to stand near this boundary. Their connection with the underworld gives them authority over beings who no longer belong among the living. They are not merely frightening figures. They help define the order that continues after death. The underworld is not a place of fiery punishment. It is generally imagined as a dusty, dim realm where the dead exist in reduced condition. Status may matter less there, although proper burial and family offerings can ease the dead person's fate. Everyone eventually enters there. Kings lose their splendor. Soldiers lay down their weapons. Merchants leave their weights and seals behind. The underworld gathers human differences into one vast silence. Its judges preserve structure within that silence. In some texts, the Anunnaki sit in judgment beside other underworld powers. They may determine destinies, confirm verdicts, or witness decisions concerning the dead. Their role remains solemn rather than theatrical. No thunder announces them. No blazing weapon is required. Their power rests in stillness, rank, and collective presence. A council decree proves that Mesopotamian religion often imagined judgment as a formal process. Divine decisions could be recorded, witnessed, and enforced through sacred hierarchy, reflecting the legal habits of human society. The underworld becomes a court, Its gates are controlled, its messengers carry orders, its rulers occupy thrones, its judges listen without sympathy to the hopes of those who arrive. You can almost hear sandals approaching along a stone passage. A fringe interpretation claims that underworld references describe hidden chambers beneath ancient cities, perhaps used by an elite group who controlled knowledge and resources. In this theory, the Anunnaki were not supernatural judges, but secret rulers remembered through religious language. The claim has little archaeological support. Underground rooms, drains, tombs, and storage spaces certainly existed, but no vast concealed headquarters has appeared beneath Mesopotamian ruins. Still lore. The theory survives because darkness invites machinery, secrets, and controlled access. Human beings distrust closed doors. The actual temples already contain restricted spaces. Only particular priests may enter certain chambers. Ritual knowledge belongs to trained specialists. Sacred objects remain hidden from ordinary worshippers. Mystery does not require a secret civilization. Institutions create mystery naturally. The scholarly debate continues over whether the Anunnaki developed from an early idea of ancestral divine powers, a formal group of great gods, or several traditions later joined under one name. Some specialists emphasize their heavenly genealogy, others focus upon their growing association with the underworld. The evidence does not resolve every stage. Texts survive unevenly. A composition copied in one city may preserve a local arrangement that was never universal. Later scribes may use an old name in a new theological setting. Meaning travels. A word once associated with one group can expand, narrow, or change through centuries of use. Modern language does this constantly, though people rarely notice the transformation while it occurs. The same process shapes gods. You stand beside a stone doorway as evening gathers across the courtyard. The heat loosens its grip, workers extinguish small lamps, while a priest completes the final offering of the day. The Anunnaki remain unseen. They possess no single face, no standard statue can contain them. They appear through collective titles, ritual language, and the weight of divine judgment. Their uncertainty gives them power. A clearly described god can be pictured, named, and placed within one shrine. A collective of ancient authorities feels wider than any image. They stand beyond personality, almost like the idea of order itself. Perhaps that is why they endure. They represent more than characters in a myth. They embody the human need to believe that decisions rest upon an older foundation, witnessed by powers who existed before any living ruler. Such belief comforts and confides in sorrow. It promises that the world follows a structure. It also suggests that every person already occupies an assigned place within that structure. Above, below, living, dead, ruler, worker, judge, and judged. The categories settle quietly around you. The final chant fades inside the sanctuary. A door closes. Darkness fills the chamber where offerings have been arranged for beings who never appear, yet whose authority shapes the entire city. The Anunnaki have taken their places. They sit where heaven meets an ancestry, and where ancestry descends into judgment. Their outlines remain uncertain, but their function becomes clearer within the solemn machinery of sacred order. The scent of wet clay rises from a courtyard where workers knead earth with water and chopped straw. You watch their hands press the mixture into wooden moulds, shaping bricks beneath the patient heat. Each block seems ordinary, yet entire cities will stand upon this humble substance. Clay builds walls, seals jars, records debts, and receives the names of gods. It also becomes humanity. Mesopotamian creation stories often describe human beings formed from earthly material mixed with something divine. The exact details differ, because no single account speaks for every city, century, or temple tradition. In one influential steer, the gods grow weary of endless labour. They dig canals, maintain the land, and carry burdens that disturb the order of heaven. their frustration rises until rebellion enters the divine household. An awkward situation when immortals discover workplace dissatisfaction. The solution is unsettlingly practical. A human creature will be made to perform the labour that lesser gods no longer wish to bear. Clay provides the body, while the essence of a sacrificed divine being contributes intelligence, spirit, or sacred awareness. You can feel the mud cooling between imagined fingers. It is heavy, smooth, and almost without shape. A birth goddess bends over it while other divine figures observe. The mixture is divided, prepared, and placed within a ritual of creation. Humanity does not emerge from nothing. People are assembled from the ground beneath them, and from a divine death whose meaning remains deliberately obscure. The body belongs to earth. Consciousness carries a dangerous inheritance from heaven. This mixture explains two human conditions. You are mortal because clay dries, cracks, and returns to dust. Yet you possess thought, language, memory, and longing, because something greater survives within the fragile vessel. The blueprint is symbolic, not mechanical. Ancient storytellers did not describe cells, laboratories, or instruments. They used materials familiar to every builder, potter, farmer, and child living beside the rivers. Clay was everywhere. It could appear lifeless, then become useful beneath skilled hands. It could preserve a thumbprint for thousands of years, while a human body disappeared within generations. Creation through clay therefore carried immediate meaning. Researchers at Yale University and Oxford University have examined surviving versions of Mesopotamian creation literature, showing how these stories connect human origins with labour, ritual, and divine necessity. The tablets preserve several related traditions. In one account, humanity is created when divine blood mixes with clay. In another, a mother goddess shapes human forms through a process resembling birth, craft, and sacred performance. These differences reveal creative adaptation. A temple school could emphasize one deity's role, while another community honored a different creator. Scribes copied older stories, expanded them, and adjusted their emphasis to suit changing religious landscapes. The central idea remains remarkably persistent. Human life is useful to the gods. People cultivate fields, prepare offerings, maintain shrines, and keep divine names alive through ritual speech. The gods receive food and honor, while humanity receives order, protection, and the uncertain privilege of existence. It is not an equal arrangement. The Creator does not ask whether the clay agrees with its assignment. Human purpose arrives with obligation already embedded inside it. You hear grain being poured into a large basket. The sound resembles dry rain. Nearby, women shape bread for a temple kitchen, while officials measure oil and wool destined for sacred use. Every task becomes part of a cosmic exchange. A farmer may believe that his labour supports both household survival and divine order. A brewer prepares drink for people, festivals, and offerings. A shepherd tends animals whose wool clothes the city and whose bodies feed ceremonies. Daily work gains sacred weight. The story gives meaning to exhaustion, but it also justifies hierarchy. Labour becomes humanity's original duty, rather than a burden imposed by powerful institutions. That possibility troubles modern scholars. Some historians interpret these myths as reflections of temple economies, where large organizations controlled land, workers, and stored goods. Others caution that literary stories should not be treated as simple political propaganda. The debate remains open. Research connected with the University of Chicago suggests that Mesopotamian labor systems varied greatly across regions and periods. Some workers depended heavily upon major institutions, while many families retained fields, trades, and local networks. Myth simplifies that complexity. It imagines humanity as one workforce serving one divine order. Even though real communities contained negotiation, independence, resistance, and competing authorities, A sacred story can describe society without copying it exactly. It can make existing arrangements appear natural. It can also explore the sadness of being conscious within a body designed to fail. Mortality enters quietly. The gods may create humans for labour, but they do not grant them endless life. Death remains the boundary separating divine existence from human experience. People build temples that may outlast them. They carve royal names into stone, bury treasured objects, and recite family histories. Yet every achievement carries the knowledge that its maker will eventually vanish. The clay remembers longer. A quirky modern theory proposes that divine blood in these texts represents genetic material introduced by advanced visitors. Supporters interpret the mixing of substances as an ancient description of biological engineering. The reading sounds precise. The tablets are not. No surviving passage explains heredity through physical mechanisms, nor does any creation scene describe technology recognizable as genetic science. The language belongs to ritual, sacrifice, birth, pottery, and divine power. Still, the theory attracts attention because a creation resembles manufacture. Beings gather materials, follow a plan, and produce a worker with a designated function. Modern readers, surrounded by machines and laboratories, can easily convert metaphor into procedure. The temptation is understandable. Yet a potter also follows a plan. A midwife understands stages. A priest mixes substances with strict care. Ancient creation need not be technological to feel structured. The structure may be the true mystery. Why does humanity require a divine essence at all? Clay alone could produce an obedient body within the logic of myth. The addition of sacred substance suggests that humans need awareness, speech, or spiritual identity to perform their roles. A mindless servant cannot maintain ritual. People must recognize the gods, remember instructions, sing hymns, and pass sacred duties across generations. Consciousness becomes both gift and burden. You know enough to obey. You also know enough to question. Perhaps the divine element explains why humans resemble their creators in ambition, jealousy, creativity, and conflict. The gods of Mesopotamian literature are powerful, yet they are rarely calm examples of perfect wisdom. They argue, desire, punish, regret, and compete. Human behavior may reflect that inheritance. The clay provides weakness, while the divine portion supplies restless complexity. This is not a comforting recipe. The body needs food, warmth, and sleep. The mind imagines eternity, justice, beauty, and escape. One part remains tied to mud, while another reaches toward the stars. Between them stands human life. A scholar from Stanford University might describe this tension through social memory or symbolic anthropology. A poet would simply notice that people spend their days building what they cannot keep. Both observations touch the same wound. The creation story does not celebrate humanity as the center of existence. It places people within an older order, created because divine society encounters a problem. You are the solution. That purpose grants importance, but not freedom. Humanity matters because work must continue, offerings must arrive, and temples must remain active. The world depends upon service, yet myths often escape the intentions of those who preserve them. A story designed to explain obedience may also reveal the unfairness of the arrangement. Listeners can hear both meanings. They may accept labor as sacred duty, while quietly noticing that the gods avoid the same burden. Gentle sarcasm survives even in ancient theology, especially when immortals delegate unpleasant tasks with impressive efficiency. The courtyard darkens as clouds gather above the plain. Fresh bricks lie in rows, still soft enough to receive accidental marks. A worker lifts one, leaving fingerprints along its edge. Those prints remain human. No king records the worker's name. No hymn celebrates his aching shoulders. Yet his touch may survive beneath a wall long after royal monuments collapse. Clay carries his presence, the same material that forms humanity within myth, preserves ordinary humanity within archaeology. It records hands, tools, footprints, and mistakes that no official scribe intended to save. Perhaps that is the quieter blueprint. You are shaped by earth, marked by labour, animated by memory, and destined to return to the substance that first held your form. The divine tisitumi, divine spark remains unshown. It may represent consciousness, ritual identity, inherited order, or the ancient intuition that human beings contain something their bodies cannot fully explain. The clay does not answer. It waits beneath the cooling air, bearing the outline of fingers and the possibility that creation was never a single event. Perhaps it happens whenever Earth receives intention. A bronze bell sounds somewhere beyond the courtyard, calling workers toward the temple storehouses. You follow a narrow lane between mud brick walls where donkeys carry baskets of grain. Dust clings to their legs. The smell of barley mingles with wool, smoke, onions, and warm river mud. Ahead, a doorway opens into a larger world. Inside, scribes sit beside weighing stones and sealed jars. Officials inspect deliveries. Labourers unload dates, fish, flour, oil, and bundles of reeds. Every object enters a system of counting, storage, and redistribution. The temple is not merely a place of prayers. It owns fields, manages herds, supports workshops, and feeds dependents. Priests conduct ceremonies, but administrators track rations with equal seriousness. Divine service requires earthly organization. The gods do not eat directly. Their statues receive meals in sacred chambers, where attendants present bread, beer, meat, fruit, and scented oils. The offerings may later pass to priests, workers, or officials, depending upon custom and status. Nothing is wasted casually. Food moves through layers of meaning. A loaf is nourishment, payment, devotion, and proof that order still functions. When grain reaches the sanctuary, human labour becomes part of a divine household. You hear jars being opened. Beer pours into smaller vessels. It is thick, nourishing, and safer than uncertain water in many daily settings. Workers receive measured portions, while elite households enjoy richer varieties. Rations define belonging. A person attached to a temple institution may receive barley, oil, or wool according to task, age, and rank. Some records list workers in careful columns, reducing lives to names and quantities. The clay tablet remembers the ration. It rarely remembers the worker's mood. Research from the University of Pennsylvania and the University of Chicago confirms that major Mesopotamian institutions controlled substantial resources during several periods. Their archives reveal fields, herds, workshops, dependent labourers, and long chains of distribution. Yet no single model explains every city. Some families farm independently, merchants operate beyond temple control, local households exchange goods through kinship, markets, and private agreements. The divine economy is powerful, but it never swallows all human activity. People remain difficult to organize completely. A shepherd may tend temple sheep while keeping a few animals for his household. A potter may complete official orders, then trade smaller vessels privately. An administrator may serve the gods while quietly improving his family's position. Sacred duty and personal ambition share the same room. You enter a workshop where women spin wool beneath filtered light. Their hands move steadily, drawing fibres into thread. Nearby, other workers weave cloth for garments, trade, and ceremonial use. Textile production supports entire institutions. Large groups may labour under supervisors, receiving rations in return. Their output travels far beyond the city, exchanged for timber, metals, stone, and other materials unavailable on the river plain. Wool becomes foreign cedar. Grain becomes copper. Labour becomes distance. The system depends upon thousands of small actions performed by people whose names rarely appear in royal stories. Boatmen steer cargo through dangerous currents. Millers grind grain until their shoulders burn. Brewers watch fermentation with a practiced attention. a missed task can disturb many others. If fields produce less barley, rations shrink. If canals fail, workshops lose food supplies. If trade routes close, metal workers wait for materials that never arrive. The economy feels sacred, but it remains fragile. Priests explain that offerings maintain harmony between gods and humans. Administrators explain that quotas must be met. Workers hear both messages while carrying baskets beneath the sun. Perhaps devotion feels different from below. A ruler may describe temple labor as service to heaven. A worker may describe it as another long day beside a supervisor with excellent eyesight. Gentle sarcasm needs no writing system. The divine economy gives labor a cosmic purpose. It also turns obedience into a religious virtue. You work because the gods require care. You accept hierarchy because divine society itself possesses ranks. Kings serve greater gods. Priests serve divine households. Workers serve institutions. Families serve memory. Every level supports another. The arrangement may appear stable, yet records reveal disputes, shortages, debts, and absences. People flee obligations, officials complain about missing goods. Workers receive late rations or incomplete payments. Even sacred systems produce paperwork about failure. One tablet may record grain owed to a temple, another may list workers who did not appear. A third may preserve an official's excuse, although ancient excuses usually sound more dignified after several thousand years. Human nature survives translation. The open scholarly debate concerns how much temple ideology shaped ordinary experience. Some historians view religious institutions as dominant economic powers. Others emphasize household independence, local variation, and periods when palaces or private merchants held greater influence. The evidence changes with place and time. A city during one dynasty may organize labor through temples. Another period may concentrate resources around the palace. Smaller settlements may depend more heavily upon families and local leaders. The sacred economy is not one machine, it is a changing network. You walk into a kitchen where ovens glow against the wall. Workers knead dough, stir pots, and prepare meals for ritual use. Heat gathers beneath the roof, carrying the scent of roasted grain and herbs. Cooking becomes ceremonial labor. Measurements matter. Timing matters. Purity rules matter. A meal prepared for a divine statue must follow expectations different from an ordinary household supper. The god receives the best portion. That claim strengthens the temple's authority to collect high-quality goods. It also allows the institution to redistribute food through festivals, staff payments, and ceremonial feasts. Public ritual feeds both belief and society. During major festivals, crowds gather near sacred precincts, musicians perform, processions carry statues through streets or along canals, offerings announce prosperity, while shared food creates loyalty. The city sees abundance. Whether every household feels abundant is another question. A quirky modern theory suggests that temple offerings preserve memories of feeding non-human visitors who depended upon people for provisions. Supporters imagine advanced beings receiving regular supplies from controlled settlements. The theory mistakes ritual for logistics. Ancient societies often fed divine images because food expressed hospitality, loyalty, and reciprocal obligation. Similar practices appear across many cultures without requiring hidden guests. Still, the image remains oddly intimate. Humans cook for beings they cannot see. They wash statues that never sweat. They dress figures that never feel cold. They present music to listeners who never answer directly. The silence does not weaken the ritual. It deepens dependence. A good harvest proves divine favor. A failed harvest may suggest neglected offerings, ritual mistakes, or divine anger. Institutions then offer solutions through prayer, sacrifice, and renewed service. Misfortune returns people to the same system. You stand beside a ledger while a scribe presses fresh signs into clay. He records barley for bakers, wool for weavers, oil for attendants, and beer for labourers. His work joins heaven to storage rooms. Without records, offerings cannot be scheduled, workers cannot be paid, herds cannot be tracked. Sacred duty depends upon accurate accounting. The gods may command the universe, but someone must count the jars. This quiet contradiction reveals humanity's role. People are not only servants within myth, they are managers of divine presence. They keep temples functioning, calendars turning, hymns remembered, and rituals supplied. The gods possess immortality. Humans provide continuity. A deity without worshippers may fade from public life. A shrine without workers collapses. A festival without grain becomes memory. Divine power depends upon human repetition, more than official theology admits. Perhaps service moves in both directions. People feed the gods. While the gods give labour meaning, institutions collect goods. While festivals create belonging, hierarchy limits freedom. Yet shared ritual binds strangers into one city. The arrangement is neither pure oppression nor simple harmony. It is a negotiation shaped by faith, necessity, ambition, and habit. Evening settles across the storehouse roofs. Officials seal the final jars. Workers carry their rations home, where children wait beside small lamps. The temple doors close. Inside, food rests before silent statues. Outside, families divide barley, oil, and bread according to need. The divine economy continues through both spaces. You sense its blueprint within every measured portion, every assigned task, and every offering placed before an unseen power. Humanity serves the sacred order, yet humanity also creates the daily world in which that order can exist. The gods receive their meal. The people carry the system onward. The night air carries the faint scent of cedar smoke from a shrine near the city gate. You move beneath the sky crowded with stars, while distant drums mark the rhythm of a ceremony. Their sound travels across flat rooftops, irrigation channels, sleeping animals, and fools waiting for dawn. Stories travel with that sound. They pass through courtyards, temple halls, workshops, and royal chambers. Each telling changes slightly, yet certain patterns remain steady beneath the changing names and details. Creation begins with disorder. A divine power establishes boundaries. Waters separate, land emerges, gods receive duties. Humans enter the arrangement and inherit work, weakness, and limited understanding. Then kingship appears. Authority descends from the divine realm and settles within chosen cities. Rulers build walls, restore temples, judge disputes, and claim that their decisions reflect a higher order. Soon balance begins to fail. People become numerous, noisy, proud, violent, or neglectful. Kings exceed their limits. Cities offend divine powers. The ordered world bends beneath human behaviour. Punishment follows. Famine enters the fields. Disease moves through crowded streets. Enemies gather beyond the walls. Rivers rise or vanish. A city once protected by its god discovers that protection can be withdrawn. Then life begins again. A survivor remains. A ruler restores worship. A temple rises from damaged foundations. The gods renew their agreement with humanity, though the terms rarely become more generous. This repeated movement resembles a hidden design. Creation, order, failure, punishment, survival, and renewal appear across many Mesopotamian compositions. The details differ, but the sequence returns with remarkable persistence. You hear it in royal hymns. A king receives divine favour, creates prosperity, and promises justice. His reign becomes a restoration of the world, as though chaos waited politely outside the palace until his coronation. You hear it in city laments. A goddess abandons her sanctuary. Enemies enter. Sacred buildings burn or collapse. Citizens mourn, while poets explain disaster as part of a divine decision too vast for ordinary understanding. You hear it in flood traditions. Humanity survives destruction through one protected figure, preserving life and ritual knowledge for another age. Catastrophe does not end the system, it clears the ground for its renewal. The pattern comforts those living through instability. If disaster belongs to a cycle, then suffering may possess meaning. A ruined city can rise again. A displaced people can imagine that divine favour will eventually return. Yet the pattern also protects authority. When rulers succeed, the gods have chosen them. When rulers fail, divine anger or human sin may receive the blame. The system remains sacred, even when its representatives perform badly. It is an efficient arrangement. Research associated with Yale University and the University of Chicago has shown how Mesopotamian rulers used restoration language within inscription. Kings repeatedly claimed to rebuild temples, renew justice, and return society to proper order. Such claims were not empty decoration. Temple restoration created employment, displayed wealth and strengthened priestly alliances, and connected a ruler with the ancient tradition. Building work became political theology shaped into mud, brick, and stone. A new king rarely presented himself as entirely new. He claimed to recover something older. That older order might be described as the will of the gods, the customs of revered rulers, or the proper arrangement established at creation. Innovation dressed itself as a restoration. You stand beside a foundation deposit buried beneath a temple wall. Inside lies a small inscribed object bearing the ruler's name and dedication. No ordinary worshipper will see it. The deposit speaks to gods, future builders, and perhaps eternity itself. It declares that the ruler has placed the structure correctly within sacred history. Architecture becomes a sentence. Its foundation names the king. Its orientation reflects ritual expectations. Its height announces resources, discipline, and control over labor. The building does not merely house religion, it teaches hierarchy. You approach a carved boundary stone set within a field. Symbols of gods appear above legal language concerning land, inheritance, or royal grants. Anyone moving the stone risks curses. Divine powers will attack the offender's health, family, harvest, and memory. The threat extends beyond human courts because property rights require assistance from heaven. Order reaches into the soil. A field boundary becomes part of the cosmic system. To violate it is not merely theft, it is rebellion against divine arrangement. This is how myth enters daily life. It appears in contracts, oaths, judgments, ceremonies, and public monuments. People do not keep sacred stories inside separate imaginary rooms. The stories explain why actions matter. An oath invokes divine witnesses because human promises can fail. A ruler claims heavenly selection because soldiers alone cannot create lasting legitimacy. A family performs rituals because memory protects identity across generations. The blueprint is everywhere, yet nowhere fully written. No single tablet presents the complete system. Instead, pieces appear across myths, laws, hymns, prayers, royal inscriptions, and administrative habits. You reconstruct it slowly. At its center stands the belief that order must be created, maintained, and renewed. Chaos is not defeated forever. It waits within drought, invasion, injustice, neglected ritual, and human appetite. Civilization therefore requires repetition. Canals must be cleared again, walls must be repaired again, offerings must be prepared again, royal authority must be announced again. Even the gods receive daily reminders of their importance. A curious fringe theory claims these cycles preserve instructions left by a vanished advanced culture. Supporters argue that repeated myths conceal technical knowledge about environmental disasters and social rebuilding. The possibility sounds attractive because ancient stories often preserve practical observations. Flood traditions may reflect real experiences. Agricultural rituals follow seasonal patterns. Royal warnings can encode lessons about failed leadership. Yet there is no evidence of a hidden technical manual beneath the myths. The system is cultural rather than mechanical. Its power comes from memory, symbolism, and repeated public performance. The blueprint does not build machines. It builds expectations. You expect rulers to protect justice because sacred tradition says kingship exists for that purpose. You expect disaster to follow disorder because myths describe the world that way. You expect renewal through proper leadership, worship, and collective labor. These expectations shape behavior. They encourage cooperation, obedience, resistance, hope, and fear. A ruler who violates justice can be criticized through the same sacred language supporting his authority. The system cuts both ways. Royal hymns praise kings as shepherds, but shepherds must feed and protect their flocks. If subjects starve while palaces flourish, the metaphor becomes uncomfortable. Ancient writers understood discomfort. Some compositions question whether human beings can recognize divine justice. A sufferer may behave correctly and still lose health, status, and family security. The pattern falters there. Punishment no longer matches wrongdoing. Order becomes difficult to see. The gods appear distant, contradictory, or silent. Scholars continue debating whether such texts challenge traditional theology or ultimately defend it. Some interpret them as expressions of doubt, while others see disciplined acceptance of divine mystery. The uncertainty remains alive. You listen to a man praying within a darkened room. He does not know which rule he has broken. He searches his memory, confesses possible faults, and asks any offended power for mercy. His fear reveals the system's hidden cost. When every event carries divine meaning, misfortune becomes accusation. A failed harvest may suggest guilt. Illness may imply neglect. Defeat may reveal that favor has moved elsewhere. The blueprint explains everything. That is precisely what makes it dangerous. A complete system leaves little room for accident. Yet daily life contains accidents everywhere, from collapsed roofs to spoiled grain and badly timed donkeys. Reality resists perfect meaning. Still, the pattern survives because it offers continuity. Generations disappear, rulers change, and cities fall. But the structure of the story remains familiar. Creation brings order. Order produces hierarchy. Hierarchy decays. Disaster exposes weakness. Renewal promises another beginning. The cycle turns quietly beneath ceremonial language, shaping how people understand both history and themselves. You sense it within the drumbeat crossing the dark plain. Each strike separates silence from sound, then returns again. The rhythm does not move toward a final conclusion. It repeats. Perhaps the ancient blueprint is not a secret diagram hidden by priests. Perhaps it is the repeated promise that broken worlds can be restored, provided everyone accepts their assigned place. That promise offers hope. It also carries a warning. Cold air slides beneath a carved doorway as you enter a chamber lined with narrow shelves. Clay tablets rest in ordered rows, each wrapped in silence. Some hold accounts of grain or livestock, others preserve hymns, legal judgments, and names of rulers whose cities have vanished. One tablet carries a stranger kind of history. Its lines arrange kings into a long sequence. Beginning in an age when rule itself descends from heaven, cities receive kingship one by one, as though authority were a sacred object moving across the land. The list begins with certainty. Kingship comes from above. No election creates it. No village council invents it. Divine powers release authority into the human world, then choose the city where it will remain. That claim changes everything. A ruler does not merely possess soldiers, wealth, or loyal officials. He stands within a chain reaching beyond ordinary memory. His throne becomes the latest seat of something older than any dynasty. You lean closer to the tablet. The earliest rulers reign for astonishing lengths of time. One governs for tens of thousands of years. Another holds power through a span longer than many civilizations endure. These numbers refuse ordinary history. No human body survives such ages. No administrative system remains unchanged for so long. The figures belong to a landscape where myth, mathematics, memory, and political purpose overlap. The tablet does not apologize. It lists impossible reigns with the same calm confidence used for later rulers whose existence appears more historically plausible. That calmness is unsettling. It suggests that the scribe sees no sharp border between sacred time and remembered time. The earliest age flows gradually toward dynasties connected with recognizable cities. The past begins among gods, it ends among kings. Between them stands a flood. The Sumerian king list survives in several copies and fragments written during different periods. Researchers associated with Oxford University and the University of Pennsylvania have compared these versions, revealing changes in names, order, and political emphasis. No single copy represents the original form. Scribes adapted the list as cities rose and rulers sought legitimacy. A dynasty could be inserted, shortened, or arranged to support a preferred story about how authority travelled. History becomes editable clay. The list presents kingship as singular. Only one city possesses legitimate rule at a given moment, even though several kingdoms often existed at the same time. Reality was crowded. The tablet makes it orderly. A victorious city can claim that kingship has arrived there because the gods transferred it from somewhere else. Conquest becomes sacred succession rather than simple military success. The defeated city loses more than territory. It loses heaven's appointment. You imagine a royal court listening while a scribe recites the sequence. Each name places the current ruler within an ancient inheritance. He may have seized power violently. The list gives him dignity. His soldiers captured gates, but divine kingship apparently packed its ceremonial luggage and moved with admirable punctuality. The humour remains gentle because the politics are serious. A ruler needs more than force. He needs recognition from priests, officials, merchants, landowners, and neighbouring states. Sacred history helps transform victory into legitimacy. The king list provides that transformation. It links new dynasties with old cities. It places chaos inside a sequence. It suggests that political change follows an invisible order directed by divine powers. The king becomes temporary. Kingship remains eternal. That distinction protects the institution even when the individual rulers fail. A bad king may be removed, yet sacred authority continues through another city. The throne survives the man. Within the earliest portion, cities such as Eridu, Bad Tibira, Larak, Sippar, and Shurapak receive kingship before the flood. Their rulers belong to a world of enormous numbers and thin details. Names appear without stories. You receive a reign length, a city, and silence. That silence invites speculation. Were these names distorted memories of tribal leaders? Did the vast reigns represent dynasties rather than individuals? Were scribes using symbolic numbers connected with astronomy, ritual, or mathematical prestigium? The scholarly debate remains unresolved. Some historians interpret the earliest reigns as entirely mythical. Others suggest that older oral traditions, local king lists, and ceremonial number systems were combined into one literary structure. There is no universal agreement. Mesopotamian mathematics favoured a counting system built around 60. Large numbers could carry symbolic elegance, especially when multiplied through sacred or administrative patterns. The enormous reigns may therefore express greatness rather than chronology. A king who rules for 30,000 years is not merely old. He belongs to a different quality of time, closer to creation than ordinary humanity. Sacred distance expands through numbers. Modern readers often treat figures as literal measurements. Ancient scribes could use numbers rhetorically, ritually, or politically without separating those purposes. A long reign may signal divine favour. A pattern total may create literary balance. A sequence may encode relationships now lost. One quirky theory proposes that the reigns measure months rather than years. Dividing the figures produces shorter spans, though many still remain unreasonable, and the method lacks support from the tablets themselves. Another fringe interpretation claims the rulers lived longer because they were not fully human. This idea often joins modern stories about the Anunnaki. suggesting that early kings descended from advanced visitors whose lifespans exceeded ordinary limits. The tablets make no such biological claim. They describe sacred kingship within mythic time. The extraordinary reigns establish remoteness, authority, and difference, but they do not provide medical histories. Still, the thought remains seductive. A list appears official. Numbers look precise. Precision creates the illusion that someone measured real events, even when the values belong to symbolic tradition. The tablet feels like evidence. It is evidence, but not necessarily for what modern imagination wants. You move deeper into the archive. Another copy contains differences. A ruler appears in one version but not another. A dynasty receives more attention in a text produced near its political centre. The variations reveal human hands shaping sacred memory. Scribes are not neutral machines. They work for institutions. They copy inherited material, but they also select, organise, and sometimes revise it. Their decisions determine which cities belong within the official sequence. Memory becomes political geography. A city included in the list receives ancient importance. A city omitted from it disappears from the sacred movement of kingship. Absence becomes defeat. The list also preserves rulers who appear in heroic literature. Figures such as Gilgamesh and Enmerkar stand between myth and possible historical memory. Their stories describe monsters, divine relationships, distant journey, and rivalry between cities. Their appearance within a king list does not prove every legend, but it suggests that remembered rulers can gather myth around them. History attracts wonder. A successful king becomes larger with each retelling. His building projects grow, his victories become impossible, his ancestry approaches the divine. Eventually, the human figure becomes difficult to recover. Perhaps that transformation begins during his own reign. Royal inscriptions already exaggerate strength, justice, and universal control. Later singers only continue the work. You can hear a court poet praising a king as shepherd of all lands. Outside the palace, several lands remain politely unaware of this arrangement. Official language stretches farther than armies. The king list performs a similar act across time. It gathers competing dynasties into one sacred sequence and smooths political disorder into divine intention. Its greatest achievement is not accuracy. It is continuity. The listener receives a past that leads toward the present ruler. Every fallen city becomes a necessary stage. Every transfer of power appears authorized by heaven. The current dynasty stands at the end of an ancient river. Yet rivers change course. Dynasties collapse. Capitals burn. New rulers commission new versions. The sacred sequence adjusts again, preserving the idea that kingship remains untouched. You place your hand near the tablet without disturbing it. The clay is small enough to carry, yet it contains reigns lasting thousands of years. Entire ages fit within narrow lines pressed by one patient scribe. The scale feels impossible. Perhaps that is the point. The list does not invite you to count ordinary lifetimes. It asks you to imagine authority existing before remembered society, descending into selected cities, and surviving every human ruler. Kings die. Cities fade. Kingship continues moving beneath the stars, carried by divine approval, military victory, scribal revision, and the enduring human need to make power appear ancient. The ground beneath your sandals rises gently, though no hill belongs naturally to this endless plain. You are standing upon a mound formed by centuries of collapsed walls, abandoned rooms, broken vessels, and rebuilt streets. Each generation lives slightly higher than the one beneath it, layering daily life into a human mountain. The wind carries dust across the soil. Fragments of pottery glint between stones. Some pieces are painted, others are plain, worn smooth by hands that disappeared long ago. Beneath them lie floors, ovens, drains, workshops, shrines, and forgotten courtyards. The city has buried itself. Archaeologists call such a mound a settlement formed through repeated occupation. To you, it feels like compressed time. Every step rests upon meals, arguments, births, illnesses, repairs, and ordinary mornings no royal inscription considered important. The oldest cities survive through accumulation. At Uruk, excavators uncovered evidence of extraordinary growth during the 4th millennium before the Common Era. The settlement expanded into a vast urban centre filled with monumental buildings, specialised labour, trade, administration, and early writing. Yet Uruk does not begin as a finished city. Its deepest layers reveal a slower transformation from smaller communities into dense neighbourhoods and ceremonial districts. Population gathers gradually, drawn by fertile land, exchange routes, religious institutions, and the possibilities created by collective labour. The process leaves no single founding moment. There is no morning when villagers awaken and announce that civilization has officially begun. Houses spread, workshops multiply, public buildings increase in scale, administrative practices become more demanding. Eventually, the settlement becomes something new. You approach the ceremonial heart of Uruk, where immense walls once enclosed halls, courtyards, and raised platforms. Coloured clay cones decorate certain facades, pressed into plaster to form geometric patterns. Sunlight would have made them shimmer. The decoration requires patience, planning, and thousands of small pieces. It transforms mud brick into a surface worthy of divine attention, while quietly proving that leaders can organise enormous quantities of labour. Monumentality changes the human body. A building larger than any house makes visitors feel small. Broad stairways control movement. Elevated rooms separate officials and priests from crowds below. Architecture teaches without speaking. Researchers from the University of Chicago and Oxford University have studied how Uruk became a centre within a wider network reaching across Mesopotamia and beyond. Pottery styles, seal impressions, and administrative objects appear far from the southern cities. Some scholars describe this spread as expansion. Others prefer exchange, migration, imitation, or several processes occurring together. The evidence shows influence, but the exact relationship between distant settlements remains debated. Urban culture travels unevenly. A community may adopt new accounting methods while preserving local rituals. Foreign merchants may settle beside older families. Administrators may copy Uruk styles because powerful systems often make their paperwork fashionable. Clay tablets travel less easily than habits. The beveled rim bowl becomes one of the era's most familiar objects. These rough, mass-produced vessels appear in astonishing numbers across many sites. Their purpose remains uncertain. They may have held worker rations, bread portions, grain, or ingredients used within institutional kitchens. Their standardized shape suggests organized production, though no surviving label kindly explains the matter. It is ancient disposable tableware, perhaps. That possibility feels disappointingly modern. You move through a workshop district where pottery kilns darken the air. Metalworkers hammer copper. Stone carvers shape seals from imported materials. Textile workers process wool in rooms filled with fibre and dust. Specialization produces expertise. It also creates dependence. A seal cutter needs food from someone else's field. A full-time scribe depends upon farmers, boatmen, builders, and cooks. The city binds strangers together through necessity. At Eridu, farther south, archaeology reveals another deep sequence of occupation. Sacred buildings rise repeatedly upon nearly the same location, each structure covering an older one. The earliest remains are modest. Later temples become larger and more formal, preserving the importance of the place across generations. This long continuity may explain why later traditions remembered Eridu as one of the first cities. Memory follows visible depth. A sanctuary rebuilt for centuries feels older than any ruler. Priests can point toward its foundation and claim that worship began there when the world was young. The claim grows believable because the ruins are real. Archaeological research does not confirm every sacred story, but it reveals why such stories take root. People living among ancient foundations encounter the past physically. Old walls emerge during construction. Burials appear beneath floors. Broken vessels belong to unknown ancestors. The ground itself seems crowded with vanished lives. Myth offers names for that silence. Later scribes describe cities receiving divine favour in remote ages. Their accounts transform settlement history into sacred sequence, assigning gods to kings and cosmic purpose to places already ancient by their own time. The scribes inherit ruins. They explain them through tradition. A temple mound becomes evidence that a god chose the city. An abandoned quarter becomes the trace of punishment. A rebuilding phase becomes restoration under divine command. History gains intention. The actual development remains more complicated. Environmental change alters river channels. Trade routes shift. Political centres rise and weaken. Populations move because of drought, conflict, opportunity, or disease. No single cause controls the city. A scholarly disagreement continues over the scale of Uruk's population and political organisation. Some researchers imagine a strongly centralised urban state. Others emphasise neighbourhoods, competing institutions, and authority divided among several powerful groups. The excavated city does not provide a complete constitution. Walls reveal movement. Storage rooms suggest collection. Seals indicate control, yet the motives and emotions of the people remain harder to recover. Objects show what happened. They rarely explain how it felt. A fringe idea claims that Uruk and Eridu were colonies established by beings remembered as gods. Supporters point toward rapid urban growth, monumental planning, and the sudden visibility of writing. The claim depends upon mistaking visibility for appearance. Archaeological layers show long development rather than instant creation. Writing grows from early accounting practices. Monumental architecture evolves through repeated rebuilding. The transformation is remarkable enough without visitors from the sky. Yet the deeper question remains: why do later people describe gradual human achievement as divine instruction? Perhaps complexity becomes difficult to remember. No single ancestor invents the city. Thousands contribute over centuries, leaving no convenient hero. Myth creates one. A god teaches building. A ruler establishes order. A sacred decree explains institutions that actually emerged through countless forgotten decisions. Narrative compresses cooperation into authority. You descend into an excavated trench where sunlight reaches only the upper walls. The air is still. Layers appear as subtle changes in soil colour. Ash, brick, and compacted debris. One floor rests above another. A hearth marks a household kitchen. Beneath it lies a wall belonging to an older room. Beneath that wall appears another surface, older still. The sequence continues downward. You begin to understand that a city is not one place. It is many cities occupying the same ground, each unaware of most lives buried below. Later inhabitants walk over forgotten temples. They build ovens above old courtyards. They place new gods within sacred districts whose earliest names have vanished. Continuity survives without perfect memory. That may be the most unsettling truth. Civilization does not preserve everything it creates. It selects, forgets, and invents. Sacred history fills spaces left empty by ordinary loss. At the edge of the mound, evening light spreads across the plain. The ruined city no longer resembles a sudden miracle. It resembles a long human accumulation, brick by brick, ration by ration, generation by generation. Communities build structures larger than their own understanding. Centuries later, tribes look backward and see divine beginnings where archaeology finds patient change, and both visions contain a kind of other truth. One explains material development. The other explains why people believe their city mattered within the universe. Beneath your feet, those truths remain layered together, impossible to separate completely, waiting inside the buried streets of cities older than memory. Rain begins as a faint tapping upon woven reeds, almost too soft to disturb the sleeping houses. You lie awake while the sound strengthens across this roof. Water gathers in the courtyard, darkening the packed earth. Beyond the walls, canals swell beneath a sky without stars. At first, nobody's alarmed. Rain belongs to the season, and rivers have always carried both danger and life. Farmers depend upon water reaching thirsty fields. Boatmen read rising currents with a practiced attention. Then the river climbs higher. Men hurry toward the embankments with baskets, ropes, and wooden tools. Families lift grain jars onto shelves. Animals pull against their tethers as the smell of mud thickens in the air. The settlement listens. A distant wall gives way with a sound like heavy cloth tearing. Water enters a lower street, carrying reeds, broken pots, and pieces of roofing. The familiar world begins moving. Flood stories appear across several Mesopotamian traditions, though their details shift between languages, cities, and periods. Some describe divine anger, others emphasize human noise, overpopulation, or a decision made within the heavenly assembly. The destruction is never merely weather. It marks a division between two ages. On one side stands a remote world of immense reigns, sacred cities, and rulers who seem closer to divine beings. On the other side begins a more recognizable human history, shorter, harsher, and limited by mortality. And the flood becomes a gate in time. A chosen man receives warning, sometimes through a god who disagrees with the decision of the divine council. He is instructed to build a vessel, preserve life, and conceal the true purpose from those around him. The instructions feel urgent but strangely controlled. Measurements are given, materials are gathered, workers assist without fully understanding what approaches. Food, animals, household members, and skilled people enter the vessel. Outside, ordinary life continues. Someone repairs a fishing net. Someone argues over a jar. Someone plans a wedding feast beneath a darkening sky. Catastrophe rarely announces itself with sufficient courtesy. The surviving flood tablets include versions associated with the hero Sudra, another centered upon Atrahasis, and a later account woven into the story of Gilgamesh. Their names differ. Their narrative bones remain related. A divine decision threatens humanity. One man receives secret knowledge. A vessel survives overwhelming water. Birds are released to search for land. Sacrifice follows when the waters retreat. Research conducted through Oxford University and the University of Pennsylvania has shown how these stories developed through long traditions of copying and adaptation. The later compositions preserve older themes while reshaping motives, characters, and theological concerns. The flood is therefore not one text. It is a family of memories. Some versions survive only in fragments, leaving missing lines exactly where modern curiosity becomes most impatient. A tablet may describe construction, then break before explaining a crucial command. Clay possesses a dry sense of humour. Archaeologists have also discovered physical evidence of flooding at several Mesopotamian sites. Layers of river silt interrupt occupation in certain settlements, showing that destructive local floods occurred repeatedly across the alluvial plain. Yet these layers do not prove one universal event covering the entire world. They appear at different dates and in different places. The rivers changed course, embankments failed, and low settlements could be devastated while distant regions remained untouched. A local disaster can become a universal story. For those trapped inside it, the distinction hardly matters. When water covers every visible field and familiar landmark, the entire world appears drowned. Memory enlarges the horizon. Children hear how their grandparents escaped a terrible flood. Their descendants add divine causes, heroic warnings, and symbolic numbers. Priests connect survival with ritual. Scribes place the event inside sacred chronology. History becomes cosmic. You feel the vessel rise beneath your feet. Its timbers groan, ropes tighten, rain strikes the roof with relentless force. Inside, animals shift in darkness, while people whisper prayers they may barely remember. The air is thick with fear, wool, grain, and breath. Outside, walls dissolve. Mud brick returns quickly to the substance from which it came. Houses collapse into brown water. Storage jars roll through streets. Temple platforms stand briefly above the flood, then disappear behind rain. The city loses its shape. This destruction carries symbolic force because Mesopotamian civilization depends upon boundaries. Canals separate useful water from ruinous water. Walls separate city from wilderness. Fields divide order into measured plots. Floodwater erases every line. It returns the landscape to something resembling the first chaos. When waters covered the world and no stable place existed for human life, creation runs backward. That reversal explains why the flood divides sacred time. The old arrangement is dissolved, allowing a new order to begin. Humanity surveys, but under altered conditions. In the Atrahasis tradition, divine concern about human numbers leads to measures controlling population and mortality. Birth, death, infertility, and religious service become parts of a revised settlement between gods and people. Survival receives conditions. The gods preserve humanity because they still require offerings and labour, yet they also limit human expansion. The renewed world is not a return to innocence. It is a negotiated restriction. Scholars continue debating how much these stories preserve memories of actual environmental disasters. Some emphasize repeated river floods and the vulnerability of lowland settlements. Others focus upon literary borrowing, ritual symbolism, and the political use of catastrophe. The flood can explain population loss, dynastic change, or the disappearance of earlier communities without recording one precise event. Several meanings may coexist. A story can remember water while also discussing power. It can preserve fear while teaching obedience. It can explain why one era ended and another began. The flood is both event and structure. A quirky theory proposes that the account records a rapid rise in sea level that overwhelmed settlements near the ancient shoreline. Supporters imagined survivors moving inland with memories of a drowned homeland. Environmental changes certainly transformed coastlines over long periods. However, the evidence does not confirm one sudden regional deluge matching every literary detail. Still, vanished shores haunt the imagination. Land once occupied by families can disappear beneath advancing water. Graves, pathways, and sacred places may become inaccessible within generations. Loss turns geography into legend. You hear silence inside the vessel. The rain has stopped. Water still moves beneath the hull, but the violent drumming has faded. People wait without knowing whether the world beyond the walls of wood still exists. A bird is released. It circles above the vessel, searching for ground. Another follows later. The return or absence of these birds becomes a message more powerful than any royal decree. Life outside must be tested. Eventually the vessel rests. The door opens onto wet air and unfamiliar stillness. Mud stretches toward the horizon. Debris lies caught among reeds. No smoke rises from household ovens. The survivors step carefully onto the ground. They bring food, tools, memory, and fear. Their first significant act is not the construction of a palace. It is an offering. Smoke climbs into the cleared sky. The gods gather around the sacrifice within the logic of the story, drawn by the scent and reminded of their dependence upon human ritual. The moment is almost uncomfortable. Divine beings who approve destruction now recognizes what a silent world would mean. Without humans, temples remain empty, offerings cease. Sacred names are no longer spoken. The survivors hold unexpected power. They are weak, exhausted, and surrounded by loss. Yet the divine order needs them. Humanity is not merely spared through mercy. Humanity is necessary. The flood therefore reveals a crack within sacred authority. The gods can destroy their servants, but complete destruction harms the system they govern. Power discovers its limit. The waters withdraw, but they leave a permanent boundary within memory. Rulers beyond that boundary belong to impossible time. Cities beyond it seem touched by divine closeness. Human kings now rule shorter lives. They inherit mortality, unstable cities, and the knowledge that order can vanish beneath water. Every canal wall becomes a defense against ancient chaos. Every harvest feels temporary. The flood does not simply end an age. It teaches that civilization survives only through fragile barriers, collective work, and the preservation of knowledge. Water remains nearby. It moves quietly through channels, reflecting the evening light. It nourishes fields with the same force that once erased them. Nothing about it appears evil. That may be the most troubling part. The boundary between life and destruction is not a monster or weapon. It is a river rising beyond its appointed place. A small flame trembles inside a reed shelter, casting long shadows across damp tools and sealed baskets. You sit among people who possess almost nothing, yet guard several objects with unusual care. One basket holds grain for planting, another contains tablets wrapped in cloth. A third protects measuring cords, carved seals, and ritual vessels. These are not treasures in the royal sense. They are instructions for beginning again. A catastrophe destroys houses quickly, but civilization disappears more slowly. It survives inside memory, habit, language, and practiced hands. A wall can collapse within minutes, while the knowledge of building walls remains alive within those who escape. This is the quiet power of survivors. They remember where canals should bend. They know which seeds tolerate salty soil. They can shape bricks, calculate rations, calm frightened animals, and recognize the first signs of infection in a wound. No god performs these tasks for them. Divine guidance may explain survival within sacred stories, yet human knowledge carries life through the ordinary hours that follow. You watch an elderly man examine the ground. He processes the mud between his fingers, smells it, and studies the colour. He decides where barley might grow without drowning. Nearby, a woman sorts seeds, discarding those softened by moisture. Their actions seem small. Together, they contain generations of experience. Mesopotamian stories often preserve a chosen survivor who carries more than his own life into the renewed world. Ziusudra, Atrahasis, and Utnapishtim belong to related traditions, each shaped by different languages and theological concerns. They receive warnings from divine powers, yet warning alone cannot build a vessel, store food, organize workers, or preserve animals. The hero succeeds because he understands materials, measurements, authority, and cooperation. Revelation requires practical skills. The vessel becomes a floating archive of human capability. Carpenters shape timbers, rope makers twist wires, brewers prepare provisions, herding knowledge keeps animals alive within confined darkness. Survival is Klexistov, even when the story remembers one name. That imbalance appears throughout ancient literature. A king receives praise for a wall built by thousands. A hero receives glory for a vessel constructed by workers whose names disappear. Memory prefers a cellbait. Reality prefers a crowd. Research associated with the University of Pennsylvania and Oxford University has shown that Mesopotamian scribes preserved older compositions through disciplined copying. Students repeated texts across generations, sometimes reproducing stories already ancient within their own era. The copying process protected cultural knowledge. It also changed it. A damaged sign might invite a correction. A rare word might receive a familiar replacement. A local god could be emphasized by a scribe working within a particular temple tradition. Memory survives through adaptation. Perfect preservation is impossible. Even spoken knowledge changes as one person teaches another. A boatman demonstrates a current by pointing toward reeds and eddies. His student remembers the lesson, but may explain it differently years later. The knowledge remains useful. Its wording does not remain fixed. You hear survivors discussing the correct dimensions of a new storehouse. One favors a wider foundation. Another warns that wet ground will cause settling. Their disagreement is not the failure. It is how inherited knowledge meets unfamiliar conditions. Old instructions must be tested against new soil, new waterways, and damaged resources. Tradition bends or breaks. This creates an open scholarly debate about ancient catastrophe stories. Some historians see them mainly as theological literature. Others suspect they preserve social memories of repeated displacement, destroyed settlements, and forced migration. Researchers at Yale University have examined how communities shape collective memory through stories that explain loss. Such narratives often preserve emotional truth even when precise chronology becomes blurred. A family remembers fear. A city remembers abandonment. A culture remembers survival through a heroic figure who carries order across destruction. The story may therefore preserve the structure of experience rather than an exact report. People receive warning too late, gather what they can, endure confusion, and rebuild through inherited skills. That pattern feels timeless. A quirky theory claims that priestly survivors deliberately hid advanced knowledge inside myths, allowing scientific information to pass through ages of collapse. Supporters search for astronomy, engineering, and coded mathematics inside symbolic episodes. Ancient texts certainly preserve sophisticated observations. They record celestial cycles, medical treatments, measurements, and administrative methods. However, so secret a library of modern technology appears within the flood narratives. The hidden treasure is less glamorous. It is continuity. Knowing when to plant can save more lives than possessing a mysterious machine without fuel, parts, or instructions. Remembering how to purify a storage jar may matter more than impressive knowledge with no practical setting. Civilization depends upon humble expertise. You walk beside a woman pressing marks into fresh clay. She records quantities of grain, names of families, and the location of newly cleared plots. The tablet creates accountability. It also creates a future memory. Weeks later, someone can check who received seed. Months later, officials can compare expected harvests with actual stores. Writing turns fragile recollection into shared reference. Yet writing needs readers. A tablet becomes silent when nobody recognizes its signs. Scribes must therefore survive not only as individuals, but as teachers. Knowledge needs succession. A child sits nearby, copying a short list into soft clay. His signs are uneven. The teacher corrects them gently, knowing that accuracy now carries unusual weight. The lesson is modest. The consequence is enormous. Through repeated instruction, people rebuild more than houses. They restore categories, measurements, names, and expectations. A field becomes property because boundaries are remembered. A ritual becomes sacred because words are repeated. A city becomes itself because survivors agree that its identity still exists. Without that agreement, ruins remain only ruins. You sense how vulnerable culture truly is. A single generation can lose a craft when specialists disappear. A language can weaken when children stop learning it. A ritual can vanish when nobody remembers the sequence. Nothing human survives automatically. Even famous stories depend upon patient repetition. The survivor hero therefore represents a deeper human role. He is not merely rescued from destruction. He becomes a bridge carrying identity across a broken timeline. His memory gives shape to the new world. Yet memory can burden as much as guide. Survivors know what has vanished. They compare every new wall with one that no longer stands. They remember faces missing from the evening meal. Rebuilding does not erase grief. A new canal may follow the line of an older one, but the hands clearing it belong to fewer families. A restored shrine may receive offerings beneath a roof built from salvaged reeds. Continuity often looks patched. That may explain why sacred stories grant survivors unusual status. Some receive long life, others become distant figures, living beyond ordinary human reach. They no longer fit comfortably among those born into the renewed world. They remember too much. Their existence proves that another order once stood where the Present order now begins. They carry knowledge of divine decisions, vanished cities, and the terrifying fragility of human arrangements. You can almost hear their silence. A younger person asks what the old city looked like. The survivor pauses, searching for words large enough to contain it. He describes crowded streets, temple music, warm bread, bright seals, and lamps reflected in canal water. His listener imagines grandeur. He does not describe every old fear. Memory selects what the future can bear. Night settles over the new settlement. The flame burns lower, but does not go out. Tools lie beside sleeping families, ready for another morning of measured effort. Nothing here is complete. Walls remain unfinished, fields remain uncertain, records remain brief, yet knowledge has crossed the catastrophe. It travels through hands, voices, habits, and clay. Divine stories may explain why one person survives, but human memory explains how an entire world begins to live again. The flame bends beneath a breath of wind. Someone shields it carefully. Moonlight settles across the archive, silvering the edges of clay tablets stacked within wooden shelves. You stand beside a scribe who has spent years copying lists of rulers, cities, offerings, and celestial observations. His fingers move slowly, guided by habits stronger than conscious thought. Numbers fill the heller. Some record barley rations. Others measure fields, debts, livestock, and building materials. Yet certain figures seem to belong to another scale entirely, reaching across thousands of years with serene confidence. The earliest kings rule for impossible spans. One reign extends beyond 30,000 years. Another approaches 40,000. A handful of rulers occupy more time than entire known civilizations. The numbers appear exact. That precision can mislead the modern eye. You're accustomed to believing that a precise figure must come from careful measurement. Ancient scribes could use numbers differently, allowing them to express greatness, completeness, sacred order, or literary design. A large number may be factual. It may also be symbolic. Mesopotamian mathematics often relied upon a system based around 60. This structure influenced calculations involving time, geometry, trade, and astronomy. The system was practical and elegant. Divisions by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and several other numbers worked smoothly within it. Merchants could divide grain, surveyors could measure land, astronomers could describe repeating cycles. Sacred literature borrowed this numerical language. A ruler associated with a perfectly patterned number might appear connected with cosmic order. A reign arranged through multiples of 60 could sound deliberate, complete, and remote. The number itself becomes ceremonial. Researchers from Oxford University and Yale University have examined how ancient numerical traditions moved between administration and mathematics and literature. Their work suggests that Mesopotamian scribes did not place a rigid wall between practical calculation and symbolic meaning. The same mind could count sheep and arrange sacred time. That does not make the numbers false. And it's false. It makes their purpose more complicated. Imagine hearing the list recited within a royal court. The audience does not carry calculators. They hear rhythm, repetition, and scale. A king who rules for 28,000 years belongs to a world beyond ordinary memory. His reign does not need to function as a modern calendar entry. It creates distance. The longer the reign, the closer the ruler seems to the divine beginning of kingship. Time itself becomes a measure of sacred importance. Ordinary rulers live brief lives. Ancient rulers occupy ages. The difference separates mythic humanity from familiar humanity without requiring a clear boundary. The list slowly moves from impossible lifespans toward shorter and more believable reigns. Sacred time narrows. Human time begins. One theory proposes that the great reigns represent dynasties rather than individual people. A single kingly name might stand for a ruling house lasting many generations. The idea offers a sensible bridge. Yet the surviving texts present these figures as individual rulers. No explanatory note announces that a name represents several centuries of descendants. Another interpretation treats the numbers as months. A reign of many thousands of years becomes far shorter when divided into lunar periods. However, even this method often produces unlikely results, and ancient scribes clearly distinguished years from months. The solution creates new problems. A fringe claim suggests that early rulers possessed longer lives because their bodies differed from modern humans. Supporters connect the immense reigns with stories of divine ancestry and beings descending from heaven. The tablets do not describe such biology. No medical record explains the unusual organs, slower aging, or inherited longevity. The claim begins with the numbers, then builds an imagined body around them. Mystery becomes anatomy. The more grounded explanation remains literary and political. Vast reigns establish an age of primordial authority, when kingship remains closer to its heavenly source. Yet even this explanation leaves question: why choose these particular values? Why does one king receive a longer reign than another? Why do totals sometimes form recognizable mathematical patterns? Scholars continue debating whether scribes inherited older number traditions, constructed them deliberately, or combined local lists into larger schemes. The evidence supports careful design, but the original reasoning remains partly hidden. The tablet preserves results. It rarely preserves intentions. You watch the scribe pause beside a damaged sign. He studies an older copy, traces the broken wedge, and chooses a number. His decision may preserve tradition. It may also alter it. A missing mark can change thousands into tens of thousands. A copied error can survive for generations, especially when later scribes trust the authority of an ancient exemplar. Accuracy depends upon fragile surface. Clay can break, ink can fade. Memory can supply what evidence no longer contains. This uncertainty does not reduce the value of the lists. It reveals the human chain behind them, where every transmission carries both preservation and risk. A council decree proves that numbers also strengthened legal authority. Land grants, taxes, temple offerings, and labor duties depended upon trusted measurements. To control numbers was to control obligations. Scribes occupied a privileged position because they translated harvests, fields, and human effort into recorded quantities. Their expertise made power visible. The same skill shaped royal history. A dynasty could be lengthened, shortened, or placed within a meaningful sequence. Numbers did not merely describe rule. They helped legitimize it. A king with a long reign appears favored. A dynasty with orderly totals appears stable. A city possessing ancient rulers gains prestige within the competition for sacred antiquity. Chronology becomes politics. You can imagine rival courts preserving different lists. Each city prefers a past that leads naturally toward its own importance. The scribe does not invent everything freely. He works within inherited conventions, local loyalties, and expectations about what royal time should look like. The result is neither simple fiction nor neutral record. It is structured memory. Mesopotamian astronomers also observed repeated celestial cycles with extraordinary care. They tracked the moon, visible planets, eclipses, and seasonal changes across long periods. Celestial regularity encouraged numerical thinking. A cycle could return after many months. A pattern might repeat across generations. Numbers therefore connected earthly rule with the dependable movement of the sky. A king whose reign fits sacred patterns could seem aligned with cosmic stability. That alignment mattered. Rulers promised justice, full granaries, secure borders, and properly maintained temples. Their authority depended upon appearing capable of restoring order. Numerical harmony strengthened that image. Yet life remained stubbornly irregular. Harvests failed. Children died young. Rivers changed course. Dynasties ended violently despite impressive claims about eternal favor. The perfect number met the imperfect world. Perhaps the enormous reigns answered that discomfort. They imagined a remote age when time itself behaved differently, before human disorder shortened life and weakened authority. Long life becomes a sign of lost closeness. You feel the attraction of that idea. Many cultures imagine an earlier age when ancestors were stronger, wiser, taller, purer, or longer lived. The distant past becomes a mirror reflecting dissatisfaction with the present. Every generation suspects declining. Ancient scribes were no exception. A quirky story told among later readers claims that each great reign encodes the orbit of a hidden planet. The theory searches for astronomical secrets within royal totals. No accepted translation supports this claim. The values do not form one consistent orbital system, and the texts never explain them as planetary measurements. Still, the theory survives because her ordered numbers invite hidden messages. Patterns feel intentional. Sometimes they are. Sometimes the mind supplies them. You listen while the scribe recites a sequence aloud. His voice turns immense spans into steady sound. Thousands of years pass within a few breaths. The effect is calming and unsettling. Human life becomes almost invisible beside those reigns. A person's entire existence occupies less than a pause between names. Yet the tablet itself fits within 2 hands. A small object contains ages. This contrast may reveal the deepest purpose of the numbers. They compress the unthinkable into manageable form. Time becomes countable. Authority becomes sequential. The unknown past becomes a list. A list feels controlled even when its contents are impossible. Names appear in order. Reigns receive totals. Cities inherit and lose kingship. Chaos becomes chronology. The scribe sets down his stylus. Outside, the moon continues across the sky with no concern for royal numbers. Generations will argue over the meanings pressed into this clay. Some will search for calendars. Some will search for visitas. Others will see political symbolism, mathematical design, or inherited myth. The tablet allows all these questions because it provides precision without explanation. Its numbers remain quiet, immense, and strangely patient. A cool breeze moves through the temple doorway, carrying incense, cedar oil, and the metallic scent of worked copper. You stand near a wall covered with carved symbols, where a priest traces each image with careful fingers. His gestures follow an order learned through years of discipline. Nothing is improvised, because sacred knowledge becomes powerful through exact repetition. Outside, the city awakens. Potters open their kilns, surveyors stretch cords across fields, builders inspect foundations damaged by moisture. Healers grind plants beside stone bowls while scribes calculate deliveries inside shaded rooms. Every craft contains a mystery. A child sees finished cloth but not the knowledge hidden within its threads. A farmer sees a canal gate but may not understand the measurements guiding its construction. Complex skill can appear almost supernatural. Mesopotamian stories often explain civilization through gifts granted by divine powers. Writing, kingship, music, metalworking, justice, agriculture, and ritual order do not simply emerge from human experimentation. They descend from above. The gods possess patterns governing civilized life. While selected humans receive permission to use them, knowledge therefore arrives with authority, limits, and sacred responsibility. It is never merely information. One tradition describes powers associated with social institutions, crafts, emotions, offices, and rituals. These powers define how ordered life functions, from royal authority to lamentation, weaving, judgment, and music. They resemble invisible instructions. A city possessing them becomes civilized because its people can perform the roles required by divine order. Without them, society loses not only technology, but identity. The pattern is broader than tools. Knowledge includes how to mourn, celebrate, command, obey, marry, judge, build, and remember. Civilization appears as a complete arrangement of human behavior. You hear a lyre being tuned inside a nearby chamber. The musician tightens each string slowly, listening for balance. His instrument combines wood, gut, metal, clue, and practiced hearing. No single material creates music. Skill joins them. Researchers at the University of Pennsylvania have studied instruments recovered from royal graves at Ur, revealing sophisticated construction and rich ceremonial use. Their forms show that music already occupied an important place within ritual and elite society. The sound itself has vanished. Only frames, fittings, images, and written descriptions remain. Modern reconstructions can suggest ancient tones, but nobody can recover the exact atmosphere of a performance. Knowledge leaves incomplete shadows. A craftsman may teach through demonstration rather than writing. He places a student's hand upon a tool, adjusts the angle, then repeats the movement until the body remembers you. Such knowledge rarely reaches the tablet. When the craft disappears, its smallest secrets vanish with it. Archaeologists recover objects, yet the pressure of the hand and timing of the breath remain absent. Myth solves this loss through divine teachers. A god reveals irrigation, a sacred figure establishes writing, a wise being brings plans, rituals, or techniques from a realm beyond ordinary human access. The explanation honors knowledge by placing its source outside humanity. It also strengthens the authority of specialists. A priest does not merely know a ceremony because another priest taught him. He preserves an instruction originating with the Eds. A scribe does not simply master signs, he participates in sacred inheritance. At Nippur and other scholarly centers, tablets reveal demanding systems of scribal education. Students copied vocabulary, mathematical exercises, proverbs, hymns, and literary compositions. Their training required years of repetition. The schoolroom produced administrators, scholars, legal experts, and ritual specialists. It also created a social boundary between those who could read complex tablets and those who could not. Knowledge became power through scarcity. A written contract could protect property. A calculated calendar could guide offerings. A medical tablet could preserve remedies unavailable to an untrained household. The specialist stood between uncertainty and order. People naturally wondered where such mastery began. Oxford University researchers have examined Mesopotamian traditions describing sages who brought wisdom to early kings and cities. These figures sometimes appear as extraordinary teachers linked with the divine realm and the ancient waters of creation. They counsel rulers. They establish proper ritual. They transmit skills necessary for civilized life. Some later traditions describe 7 sages associated with the remote age before catastrophe. Their number varies in certain texts, and their identities shift across centuries. Still, the pattern remains compelling. A small group carries exceptional knowledge into human society, creating a bridge between divine intention and earthly practice. The open scholarly discussion concerns what these sages originally represented. Some historians interpret them as mythic models of priestly scholarship. Others suggest they preserve memories of influential ritual experts, court advisors, or culture heroes transformed through centuries of storytelling. The evidence allows several possibilities. Their supernatural features may express status rather than literal appearance. A person whose knowledge seems impossible can become more than human within collective memory. Reputation acquires scales, wings, or divine ancestry. A curious fringe claim identifies these sages as visitors wearing protective suits, especially when ancient art shows hybrid beings with fish-like coverings. Supporters argue that unusual clothing records advanced equipment. They interpret ritual containers as technical devices and sacred trees as coded machinery. The images do not support that certainty. Fish cloaks likely connect priests and protective beings with water, fertility, purification, and divine wisdom. Ritual art uses symbolic forms because symbols can carry several meanings at once. A costume need not conceal a spacesuit. Still, the figures look strange. Their layered garments, careful gestures, and mysterious objects create an atmosphere of controlled knowledge. Modern eyes search for equipment because technology now represents hidden powers. Ancient eyes may have seen holiness. Every age recognizes mystery through its own tools. You enter a chamber where a scholar studies the movement of the moon. He compares fresh observations with records copied from previous generations. Night after night, he watches, he notes first visibility, disappearance, position, color, and unusual events. His work joins patience with tradition. Mesopotamian astronomical knowledge developed through long observation rather than sudden revelation. Research published by scholars connected with Yale University shows how records accumulated across generations, allowing patterns to become visible. The achievement is deeply human. It requires disciplined institutions, stable archives, trained observers, and the willingness to preserve information beyond one lifetime. Yet the scholars themselves may describe wisdom as divine. They do not experience a contradiction. Observation reveals the order placed within the heavens. Calculation becomes a method for reading signs established by higher powers. Knowledge is discovered and received simultaneously. The distinction matters. A modern scientist may explain an eclipse through orbital motion. A Mesopotamian observer may calculate the event while also interpreting it as a message concerning kingship or public danger. Accurate prediction does not remove sacred meaning. It can strengthen it. The person who understands celestial cycles appears to know the intentions of heaven. His authority increases because he can recognize patterns invisible to ordinary observers. A ruler listens carefully. Court scholars advise him about rituals, threats, and auspicious times. Their knowledge supports political decisions while remaining protected by specialized language. Heaven becomes an archive. The stars become writing. You step into a metalworker's yard where charcoal glows beneath a clay furnace. The craftsman studies color rather than using a measured thermometer. He knows when copper softens. He knows which mixture produces stronger bronze. He recognizes failure through sound, smoke, and texture. His knowledge lives inside experience. To an outsider, the transformation seems magical. Dull stone enters heat while shining metal emerges. The gods appear close to such moments. Creation itself seems repeated whenever raw matter becomes a tool. Ornament, weapon, or vessel. Craft imitates divine ordering by giving shape to substance, or the craftsman holds dangerous to impure. Fire destroys, but controlled fire creates. Metal strengthens plows and sharpens blades. Knowledge carries no single moral purpose. It serves whoever commands it. This tension enters the idea of divine gifts. Civilization receives writing, kingship, and craft, yet also acquires warfare, hierarchy, deception, and grief. The complete pattern includes discomfort. Order is never entirely gentle. Perhaps ancient storytellers understood that knowledge expands both possibility and danger. A new technique feeds cities, then supports armies. A record protects ownership, then measures taxation. A calendar guides planting, then organizes compulsory labor. Gifts from above arrive with hidden costs. The city glows beneath evening lamps as workshops begin closing. Tools are cleaned and stored. Students smooth practice tablets for reuse. Knowledge remains in hands, voices, marks, and habits. No single teacher owns it. Generations add observations, correct mistakes, and preserve methods whose inventors have vanished. Later memory gathers those unknown contributors into divine figures. Perhaps this is not deception. Perhaps it is gratitude shaped into myth. The people understand that civilization exceeds any one lifetime. Its skills feel inherited from a depth beyond ordinary memory, so they place that inheritance among the gods. Above the rooftops, the first stars appear. A scholar raises his eyes, while a musician tests one final string inside the temple. The city listens for patterns. Some arrive through careful observation, others emerge through ritual, story, and authority. All of them promise that the world can be understood, at least partially, if the correct knowledge reaches the correct hands. Cold stone presses against your palm as you climb toward the upper terrace of a temple complex. The city spreads beneath you in widening layers of roofs, canals, gardens, workshops, and crowded lanes. From this height, the settlement no longer appears accidental. Streets converge near sacred precincts. Storehouses cluster beside controlled entrances. Processional roads guide movement toward the places where authority becomes visible. The temple stands at the center. It is a house for a god, but it is also far more than a house. Its walls contain grain, records, tools, garments, offerings, and the people who manage them. Courtyards receive workers, petitioners, musicians, merchants, and officials. Sacred space organizes human space. You hear the scrape of sandals below. A line of laborers carries baskets toward a raised platform, each person moving beneath the watch of supervisors. Scribes wait near the entrance, recording deliveries and assigning portions. The building consumes materials constantly. Mud bricks must be replaced after rain. Timber beams require repair. Plaster cracks beneath heat. Coloured decorations fade. Doors warp. Drains clog. And stairways weaken beneath generations of feet. Divine residences demand excellent maintenance. Temple construction therefore creates work for entire communities. Builders, potters, metalworkers, carpenters, boatmen, weavers, bakers, and herders all contribute to the sacred institution. The god receives a house. The city receives an economy. Archaeological research associated with the University of Chicago has confirmed that Mesopotamian temple precincts often included administrative rooms, workshops, storage areas, and monumental courtyards. Their design reflects ritual needs, but also the movement of goods and people. Every doorway controls access. A wide gate admits processions. A narrow passage limits entry. A raised chamber separates divine presence from the ordinary crowd. Storage rooms remain close enough for officials, yet hidden from public view. Architecture shapes behavior before anyone speaks. You slow your steps near a staircase ascending toward a sanctuary. The climb forces your body into a measured rhythm. Each level reveals more sky and less street. Elevation creates distance. The god appears above daily noise, while priests and rulers gain importance through controlled proximity. Those permitted to climb farther become visibly different from those who remain below. The structure teaches hierarchy through movement. A farmer may bring grain to the outer court. An official carries it farther inside. A priest presents a portion near the divine image. The same grain changes meaning as it travels. It begins as harvest, becomes obligation, then transforms into offering. Architecture performs that transformation by guiding objects through increasingly sacred zones. The temple is a machine of order. It does not contain gears or hidden engines. Its machinery consists of doors, stairways, records, ceremonies, schedules, ranks, and repeated human actions. Each part directs attention. Each part assigns a place. At dawn, attendants open chambers and prepare the divine household. At midday, officials inspect deliveries. At sunset, lamps and offerings complete another cycle. Time becomes organized around sacred routine. Researchers from Yale University have studied how temple calendars linked festivals with agricultural seasons, royal ceremonies, and celestial observation. Ritual schedules helped communities coordinate labor while giving seasonal change a sacred explanation. The sky mattered greatly. Priests and scholars watched the moon, stars, and visible planets from temple environments, though not every raised platform functioned as an observatory. Elevated spaces offered broad horizons, especially across the flat southern plain. A rising star could announce a season, a lunar phase could guide ceremonial timing, an eclipse might disturb the royal court and inspire protective rituals. Heaven appeared measurable, but never harmless. The temple connected that distant order with the city below. Its upper terraces approached the sky symbolically, while its foundations entered layers filled with older buildings and sacred deposits. It joined height with depth. Above stood divine authority. Below rested ancestral memory. Between them moved administrators with tablets, proving that cosmic balance still required respectable paperwork. You enter a broad courtyard prepared for a public ceremony. Musicians gather beside one wall. Soldiers hold the crowd behind marked boundaries. Officials arrange gifts where everyone can see them. The ruler arrives in ceremonial clothing. His appearance is carefully staged. He may present offerings, restore a divine statue, or receive symbols of authority from priests. The event is religious. It is also political theatre. The crowd sees the king approaching the wall. They witness wealth flowing towards the sanctuary. They hear hymns describing prosperity, justice, and divine approval. Power becomes visible through performance. A palace can command fear, but a temple gives command sacred depth. The ruler stands beneath a tradition older than his dynasty, yet the ceremony also places him near its centre. He serves the god. Conveniently, the god confirms his rule. This relationship does not always remain peaceful. Temples control land, labour, wealth, and public loyalty. Priestly households can support rulers, but they can also defend their own interests. The sacred institution possesses leverage. Scholars continue debating how independent major temples remained from royal authority. Some historians describe them as powerful corporate households with their own resources and personnel. Others argue that kings often supervised appointments, construction, and offerings closely. The balance shifted according to city, dynasty, and political strength. No universal arrangement survived. A weak ruler may depend upon temple approval. A strong ruler may reorganize sacred estates. A conquering king may restore a sanctuary publicly while placing loyal officials inside it. Respect and control can wear the same robe. You walk beside a foundation where workers place carefully shaped bricks. Some carry stamped inscriptions naming the ruler responsible for construction. His name enters the wall repeatedly. Future builders will discover it. Priests will remember his generosity. The structure becomes a monument to both divine presence and royal ambition. Construction claims permanence. Yet mud brick remains vulnerable. Wind, rain, neglect, and warfare gradually soften the sharpest edges. A massive building can collapse into a rounded mound within centuries. Its authority outlives its shape. Later generations find the ruin and imagine impossible builders. They see platforms larger than houses, foundations deeper than memory, and walls too broad for ordinary explanation. Human labour disappears behind scale. Scale. A fringe belief claims that certain Mesopotamian monuments required knowledge given by advanced beings. Supporters point toward precise orientation, immense foundations, and the symbolic connection between temples and the sky. The evidence shows skilled planning, not hidden technology. Surveyors used cords, sighting methods, repeated measurement, and generations of accumulated experience. Large labour forces moved earth and brick through organisation rather than mysterious machines. The achievement remains extraordinary. Perhaps ordinary human cooperates and is simply less fashionable than celestial engineers. You pause beside a carved plan pressed into the clay. Lines below show walls, rooms, gates, and courtyards with the surprising clarities. The design proves foresight. Builders understood scale, drainage, load, and alignment. They adjusted structures when older foundations settled unevenly. They rebuilt damaged sections without abandoning the sacred location. Planning became inherited knowledge. A master builder may receive divine titles within royal inscriptions because architecture transforms landscape through controlled proportion. His work resembles creation itself. Walls separate space. Platforms raise order above mud. A temple converts scattered labour into one visible form. This may explain why later stories describe godlike planners. Monumental buildings outlast the memories of those who made them. When names disappear, supernatural authorship becomes easier to imagine. The structure seems too deliberate for forgotten hands. Yet forgotten hands are everywhere. Finger marks remain inside bricks. Basket impressions survive beneath foundations. Uneven plaster records hurried repairs. A child's footprint may harden where ceremonial paving once dried. The temple appears divine from a distance. Up close it is intensely human. Evening gathers above the upper terrace. Shadows stretch across the city, dividing roofs and lanes into quiet patterns. Below, storehouses close. Priests complete the final rites. Scribes count what remains. Guards secure the gates while workers descend toward their homes. The great structure settles into darkness. It has organized movement, wealth, memory, authority, and time throughout the day. It has made hierarchy feel natural and divine presence feel architectural. Perhaps no hidden engine lies within it. Perhaps the building itself is the engine, powered by a belief, labour, repetition, and this careful arrangement of human bodies through sacred space. The stars emerge above its highest wall. From the streets below, the temple seems to touch them. Electric light hums above a reading table while rain touches the museum windows with patient fingers. You sit beside photographs of ancient tablets, modern dictionaries, excavation reports, and translations produced across many decades. The room belongs to the 20th century, yet the names on the pages come from vanished cities. Here, the Anunnaki begin changing again. They leave the temple court and enter popular books, radio programs, documentaries, and late evening conversations. Their ancient titles acquire new meanings shaped by rockets, laboratories, hidden planets, and fears about technology. Modern imagination gives them machinery. A divine assembly becomes a command structure. A journey from heaven becomes space travel. The creation of humans from clay and divine substance becomes biological engineering. The translation feels startlingly simple. That simplicity gives it power. Readers unfamiliar with the original languages encounter a story that seems to explain every mystery at once. Civilization begins through outside intervention. Monumental buildings reflect advanced instruction. Ancient gods become misunderstood visitors. Human origins become a planned experiment. The theory removes uncertainty from damaged tablets, filling every gap with a confident answer. Broken passages no longer remain broken. Contradictory traditions become fragments of one concealed history. Nothing happens by accident. This modern interpretation gained wide attention through writers who claim that Mesopotamian texts described beings arriving from another planet. The most influential version presented the Anunnaki as technologically advanced inhabitants of a distant world. According to that story, they came seeking valuable resources. They established operations upon Earth, altered early human beings, and created a labouring population capable of serving their needs. Ancient religions supposedly preserved these events through symbolic language misunderstood by later generations. The gods became engineers. Creation became manufacture. The appeal is immediate, but the story resembles both science fiction and sacred history. It offers machines without removing wonder, and it offers divine creators without requiring traditional faith. It stands between belief and technology. You can sense why the idea spreads. The 20th century witnessed aircraft crossing continents, rockets leaving the atmosphere, and human beings walking upon the moon. Machines accomplished acts that earlier societies would have described through myth. The border between impossible and possible shifted rapidly. At the same time, archaeology revealed cities older than many people expected. Museums displayed tablets filled with strange signs, while translations introduced forgotten gods and ancient flood stories to broad audiences. Mystery met technological confidence. A reader could look at a carved winged figure and imagine equipment. A circular symbol might resemble a planet. A sacred container could become a device whose purpose had been forgotten. The ancient image becomes modern evidence. Yet resemblance is not translation. A carving can look familiar while belonging to a completely different symbolic world. Wings may express divine speed or supernatural status. Horned crowns may indicate sacred rank rather than protective helmets. Context controls meaning. Professional scholars study that context through language, archaeology, comparative texts, and the history of religious practice. They ask how a sign appears across hundreds of tablets, not whether one photograph resembles modern equipment. The method is slower. It rarely produces dramatic revelations. Ancient languages require patience because one word may carry several meanings. Its correct sense depends upon grammar, period, genre, and neighbouring signs. A royal hymn speaks differently from a grain account. A myth uses imagery differently from a legal document. Treating every phrase as literal description can produce a story the ancient scribe never intended. This problem becomes central within modern Anunnaki theories. Certain translations rely upon unusual word choices rejected by specialists. Terms connected with heaven, divine rank, or sacred descent are rendered as descriptions of physical arrival. Poetry becomes engineering. Metaphor becomes eyewitness testimony. The result feels convincing because technical language sounds precise. Once a divine object becomes a machine, every following detail can be interpreted mechanically. A door becomes an airlock. A shining garment becomes protective equipment. A heavenly weapon becomes directed energy. Each assumption supports the next until the entire ancient world resembles a disguised research facility. The structure is elegant. Its foundation remains uncertain. Research associated with the University of Chicago, Yale University, and Oxford University has produced extensive studies of Mesopotamian religion and language. These scholars generally understand the Anunnaki as a shifting group of deities within ancient theological traditions. They do not describe them as extraterrestrial scientists. The tablets connect them with divine assemblies, ancestry, authority, destiny, and the underworld. Their roles vary, but they remain part of a religious universe shaped by Mesopotamian culture. This mainstream interpretation is less dramatic. It is also supported by broader evidence. A fringe theory often gains strength by focusing upon isolated details. One symbol appears strange, one number seems impossible, one translation offers a technological possibility. The broader archive creates resistance. Thousands of administrative records show human institutions developing through recognizable needs. Archaeological layers reveal gradual settlement growth. Writing evolves from earlier counting systems. No sudden technical interruption appears, yet believers may answer that evidence was hidden, destroyed, or misunderstood. Absence becomes proof of concealment. The theory protects itself. A missing object indicates secrecy. A scholarly objection suggests institutional fear. A damaged passage may contain the lost confirmation. Every challenge becomes another doorway. This pattern does not belong only to ancient astronaut stories. Human beings often prefer explanations that cannot be disproved easily, especially when those explanations reveal hidden rulers or forbidden knowledge. Mystery becomes emotionally satisfying. Perhaps you feel its attraction even now. The thought that humanity was designed by visitors gives suffering a source, intelligence a purpose, and history a concealed architect. It replaces the long uncertainty of evolution, culture, and social development with intention. Someone planned the outcome. Someone knows why you exist. That possibility can feel comforting, even when the supposed creators appear cold or exploitative. A cruel plan may seem easier to accept than no plan at all. The blueprint offers meaning through design. Scholars continue debating why such interpretations remain popular. Some emphasize distrust toward institutions and experts. Others point toward the emotional power of lost knowledge, cosmic ancestry, and secret history. Modern media strengthens the effect. Images of ruins appear beside stars, spacecraft, and dramatic music. Questions are framed as revelations. Uncertainty becomes evidence that official history is incomplete. official history is incomplete. That statement is true. Archaeologists constantly revise dates, interpretations, and models as new discoveries appear. Ancient languages contain unresolved terms. Entire archives remain buried or destroyed. But incompleteness does not validate every answer. A missing chapter cannot be replaced by any story you prefer. Evidence still limits interpretation, even when certainty remains impossible. The responsible position often feels unsatisfying. It says perhaps, it says probably, it says the text may mean this, though another reading remains possible. Popular theory prefers certainty. It offers a hidden planet, a specific mission, a designed species, and a secret war remembered as mythology. The narrative moves smoothly because hesitation has been removed. Doubt sleeps outside the room. A curious detail deepens the irony. Ancient Mesopotamian scribes themselves valued authority, secrecy, and specialized knowledge. Ritual instructions could remain restricted, while scholarly traditions passed through trained circles. Modern readers recognize that secrecy and enlarge it. A guarded ritual becomes suppressed science. A priestly title becomes the rank of a technician. Restricted knowledge becomes proof of a vanished project. The ancient elite would probably understand the appeal. They also understood that mysteries strengthen power. You close one modern book and open a tablet catalogue. The difference in tone is striking. The modern book speaks of certainty. The catalogue speaks of fragments, uncertain readings, damaged lines, and parallels from other sites. One offers revelation, while the other offers disciplined patience. Both ask you to imagine. Only one admits how much remains unknown. Outside, rain continues against the glass. Museum lights reflect upon the window, placing your own face over the darkness beyond. Perhaps that reflection explains the transformation. Every generation sees itself within the ancient world. An age of kings discovers sacred monarchy. An age of industry discovers organized labor. An age of genetics discovers engineered humanity. The tablets become mirrors. The Anunnaki remain ancient deities, yet modern culture dresses them in the clothing of its deepest hopes and fears. Their silence allows new identities to gather around them. They become visitors because humanity now looks outward. They become engineers because humanity now understands creation through technology. They become secret rulers because modern societies fear invisible systems controlling ordinary life. The interpretation reveals the present as clearly as the past. You leave the reading table beneath the steady electric light. The tablets remain within their cases, small, cracked, and resistant. They do not confirm the modern story. They do not prevent it from spreading. Between evidence and desire, another mythology has formed, wearing the appearance of history while speaking the language of the technological age. A projector clicks softly inside a darkened lecture hall, and an ancient relief appears upon the white screen. You see a winged figure beside a carved tree, holding a small vessel and a cone-shaped object. The image is unfamiliar, precise, and strangely modern beneath the electric light. Someone asks what the objects really are. The question seems reasonable. The answer arrives with dramatic certainty. The vessel becomes advanced equipment. The cone becomes a technical instrument. The figure becomes a visitor wearing protective clothing. For a moment, the interpretation feels obvious. You recognize shapes by comparing them with objects already stored inside your memory. A circular form resembles a helmet. A rectangular object resembles a control panel. A seated god resembles a commander inspecting human workers. The eye completes what the evidence leaves unfinished. This habit is not foolish. It allows you to recognize faces in shadow, danger in movement, and useful patterns within confusion. Human survival depends upon making rapid connections, yet ancient images demand slower attention. A symbol repeated across temples may carry ritual meaning that cannot be guessed from appearance alone. An object resembling a machine part may actually belong to ceremony, agriculture, kingship, or protective magic. Shape does not explain function. Archaeologists therefore compare images across locations, periods, and written sources. They examine where an object appears, who holds it, which deity stands nearby, and what actions surround the scene. Context changes everything. Research conducted through Oxford University has shown how Mesopotamian imagery followed established conventions. Horned crowns identified divine beings. Relative size expressed status. Repeated gestures communicated blessing, worship, protection, or authority. Artists were not attempting photographic realism. They created visual language. A larger figure did not necessarily possess a larger body. A winged being did not require biological wings. A sacred tree did not need to represent one physical plant. The image operated through symbols understood by its original audience. You, however, approach it without that shared education. The missing knowledge creates a vacuum, and modern technology enters quick. Rockets, breathing equipment, laboratories, and communication devices supply explanations that feel tangible. Mystery becomes machinery. The effect grows stronger when the monument is damaged. A broken edge conceals part of an object. A missing inscription removes its name. Weather softens the distinction between clothing and anatomy. Damage encourages invention. A complete carving may show a ritual scene clearly. A fragment can resemble almost anything, especially when photographed from one angle and separated from neighbouring figures. The fragment feels secret because it is incomplete. A curious modern practice involves rotating ancient images until familiar shapes appear. A ceremonial object becomes a helicopter when turned sideways. A decorative pattern becomes a circuit board when enlarged and isolated. The method produces excitement. It rarely produces reliable history. You could perform the same trick with clouds, tree bark, or stains upon stone. The mind searches constantly for recognizable forms, then rewards itself when one appears. Psychologists call this pattern recognition. Historians call for comparison. The two habits move at different speeds. A dramatic claim needs only one striking image. A careful explanation may require dozens of related examples, knowledge of language, excavation records, and patience with uncertainty. The dramatic image usually wins the first encounter. It fits upon a screen. It survives within memory. A footnote rarely enjoys such advantages. You walk through a museum gallery where ancient objects stand beneath focused light. Their labels are brief because space is limited. A carved figure receives a date, location, material, and cautious description. The object appears isolated. Its temple, smoke, music, paint, surrounding walls, and living worshippers have vanished. You see the artifact without the world that once made it ordinary. Isolation increases strangeness. A ritual bucket seems mysterious when no procession surrounds it. A ceremonial garment resembles equipment when its fabric, colour, and movement are gone. The museum preserves the object. It cannot fully preserve familiarity. Researchers at Yale University have examined how ancient art gains meaning through repeated visual conventions. One symbol rarely stands alone. Its importance emerges through patterns shared across many objects and texts. Popular interpretations often reverse this process. They begin with one unusual image, assign it a technological meaning, then search for other fragments that appear to support the conclusion. The conclusion comes first. Evidence follows behind. This method creates a strong illusion of discovery. Each new resemblance seems to confirm the hidden pattern, while conflicting examples receive less attention. A cone-shaped ritual object becomes a device. When similar cones appear near plants, water, or purification scenes, those details are ignored or reinterpreted as maintenance procedures. The theory expands to absorb resistance. One quirky claim suggests that handbags shown in ancient art represent portable power units. Similar shapes appear in Mesopotamian reliefs, Mesoamerican monuments, and other distant traditions. The resemblance looks impressive, yet handled containers are common human objects. People carry offerings, tools, seeds, water, medicine, and ritual materials in compact vessels across many cultures. A shared shape does not prove shared technology. Hands create similar solutions to similar needs. The scholarly debate remains open concerning the precise meaning of some ritual objects. Specialists disagree about whether particular cones represented plant material, purification tools, or symbolic substances connected with fertility. Uncertainty is real. It does not automatically favour the most extraordinary explanation. This distinction is difficult because uncertainty feels like an invitation. When experts say that an object may have several meanings, a confident outsider can appear more courageous by choosing one. Confidence resembles knowledge from a distance. The ancient astronaut interpretation also benefits from narrative simplicity. It connects unrelated ruins, gods, numbers, and myths through one central cause. Visitors arrived. Visitors taught. Visitors built. Visitors departed. The story moves smoothly because complexity disappears. Local traditions become distorted records of one global event. Real history behaves less politely. Cultures borrow, resist, imitate, forget, rediscover, and develop similar ideas independently. Symbols change across centuries. Political needs reshape religious stories. Crafts evolve through repeated experiment. No single thread controls the whole tapestry. You hear a narrator describe ancient builders as incapable of creating monuments without outside assistance. The claim often arrives disguised as admiration. The stones are too heavy, the alignments are too precise, the mathematics are too advanced. Yet this admiration quietly diminishes the people who perform the work. It treats ancient intelligence as surprising, almost suspicious. Mainstream archaeology reveals something more demanding. Large monuments grow from surveying knowledge, organised labour, skilled craftsmanship, social pressure, and generations of improvement. Stanford University researchers studying ancient engineering have emphasised how communities solve difficult problems through accumulated practice rather than sudden revelation. Human ability becomes visible through repetition. A builder learns from failed walls, a surveyor corrects alignment, a work crew develops safer methods for moving weight. Expertise grows quietly. Myth prefers a gift from above because gifts require fewer explanations. Modern audiences may prefer the same solution. A visiting civilization provides instant knowledge, bypassing the slow centuries of mistakes, apprenticeship, and forgotten workers. The idea flatters both ancient monuments and modern technology. It says the past was advanced, but only because it secretly resembled the present. The old world becomes acceptable once it contains machines. Perhaps this explains the strongest seduction. Ancient astronaut stories allow you to feel skeptical and enchanted at the same time. You may reject traditional gods while keeping creators from the sky. You may doubt priests while trusting hidden technicians. You may dismiss miracles while accepting technology so advanced that it performs the same role. The language changes. The emotional structure remains. There are higher beings. They possess superior knowledge. They shape human destiny. They leave clues for a chosen few. The theory feels rebellious, yet it often rebuilds the same hierarchy found within sacred tradition. Humanity remains dependent upon powers descending from beyond ordinary reach. You are still the created servant. Only the laboratory replaces the temple. The screen in the lecture hall grows dark. The winged figure disappears, leaving a pale rectangle before your eyes. You remember the vessel. You remember the strange cone. You also remember how quickly your mind transformed them into familiar technology. Perhaps the most revealing blueprint is not hidden upon the stone. Perhaps it operates within the observer, arranging uncertainty into patterns that match existing hopes and fears. The ancient image remains silent. The modern imagination supplies the sound. The room is quiet enough to hear paper shifting beneath a scholar's hands. You sit beside a long table covered with photographs, handwritten notes, clay fragments, and dictionaries thick enough to discourage casual confidence. Each object belongs to the patient work of understanding what ancient scribes actually recorded. No single tablet explains the Anunnaki completely. Instead, their name appears across hymns, myths, ritual compositions, god lists, royal inscriptions, and texts concerning the realm of the dead. Their role changes with genre, location, and historical period. This variety creates difficulty. A line copied in one city may describe them as prominent divine beings attending an assembly. Another composition may place them among judges below the earth. A later scholar may arrange them within a theological list shaped by different political concerns. The word remains recognizable. Its meaning refuses to stand still. You watch the scholar examine a broken tablet beneath angled light. Several signs remain sharp, while others disappear along a fractured edge. One missing wedge may alter a verb. Two missing lines may remove the subject entirely. A damaged name can force translators to compare parallel copies from distant collections. Translation begins with uncertainty. The scholar does not simply replace one ancient word with one modern word. She studies grammar, spelling, scribal habits, context, and related passages. A sign may represent a sound. It may also represent a complete word or an idea. Its meaning depends upon the signs surrounding it and the language used by the original scribe. This is why confident translations deserve careful inspection. A modern writer may select one possible meaning while ignoring others. A poetic phrase can then become a technical statement, especially when surrounding lines remain untranslated. The result appears authoritative. The method is not. Research from the University of Chicago, Yale University, Oxford University, and the University of Pennsylvania has built extensive dictionaries and text collections through generations of scholarship. These projects compare thousands of occurrences rather than relying upon one convenient passage. Patterns emerge slowly. A word associated with heaven does not automatically mean outer space. A verb describing descent may refer to movement from a temple platform, a mountain, the sky, or a position of authority. Ancient language carries layered geography. Heaven can be a divine realm, a visible sky, or a symbol of supreme rank. Earth can mean soil, territory, the human world, or the underworld depending upon context. Literal reading is not always accurate reading. You lean closer as the scholar draws a small bracket around several damaged signs. She marks them as uncertain rather than pretending certainty. That bracket carries intellectual honesty. It tells the reader that clay has vanished. The reading remains disputed, or the reconstruction depends upon another copy. Popular retellings often remove such marks. Uncertainty interrupts the narrative. It slows momentum and weakens the appearance of revelation. So damaged lines become complete. Possible readings become definite statements. Editorial guesses become ancient declarations. The modern voice quietly enters the tablet. One passage may be paraphrased several times until its original structure disappears. A deity becomes a commander. Divine servants become workers in an industrial facility. A sacred journey becomes planetary travel. The transformation may occur without deliberate dishonesty. Each retelling inherits the assumptions of the previous one, then adds another layer of explanation. Eventually, interpretation resembles quotation. You encounter a sentence widely repeated in modern discussions. Supposedly translated from a Sumerian tablet, it sounds remarkably clear, mentioning machines, distant planets, or the deliberate alteration of humanities. The sentence has no reliable tablet number. No museum catalogue identifies it. No published transliteration allows specialists to inspect the original signs. It exists only through repetition. This is a warning. Authentic Mesopotamian texts usually possess excavation details, collection numbers, scholarly editions, and histories of translation. Those records may remain imperfect, but they allow claims to be checked. A quotation without an identifiable source floats freely. It can be repeated forever because nobody can return to the clay and challenge it. A quirky modern habit involves treating every image of a star as a map of the solar system. Circular symbols are counted, arranged, and matched with modern planets. Mesopotamian artists certainly represented stars and celestial bodies. Scholars can identify several symbols through inscriptions and repeated context. Yet not every circle is a planet, and not every arrangement represents an astronomical diagram. Decoration can remain decoration. Symbolism can remain symbolism. The open scholarly debate concerns many smaller questions, rather than one hidden cosmic conclusion. Researchers discuss how divine groups developed, which traditions influenced later compositions, and whether certain names preserve older regional beliefs. They also debate pronunciation, genealogy, ritual function, and changes in underworld theology. These disagreements are genuine. They do not indicate that the entire field is collapsing. They show that specialists work with incomplete evidence and test several explanations against the surviving record. Disagreement can refine knowledge. It does not automatically reveal suppression. You turn toward a shelf holding fragments from one literary composition. Some pieces join neatly, while others belong to copies made centuries apart. The differences matter. A later scribe may update spelling. He may replace an unfamiliar god with a better-known one. He may shorten a passage or expand a speech. Ancient texts possess histories. They are not recordings made during the events they describe. Many survive through copies produced long after the earliest version took shape. A myth may preserve very old traditions. Its surviving tablet may still belong to a later schoolroom, library, or royal archive. The distance between story and object must remain visible. This is especially important when interpreting creation accounts. The tales describe humanity formed for service, but they do so through religious imagery involving clay, birth, sacrifice, and divine decision. They do not explain biological inheritance. They do not name instruments, laboratories, chromosomes, or methods of physical alteration. Those details come from modern interpretation rather than ancient vocabulary. The difference is quiet but decisive. A story can inspire a technological comparison without becoming a technical report. Metaphor may resemble procedure because both arrange actions into sequence. Materials are gathered. A plan is followed. A new being appears. Yet ritual, pottery, childbirth, and craft all contain sequences. Technology owns no exclusive claim upon organized creation. You hear rain touching the archive windows. The scholar places one fragment beside another and notices that their edges nearly meet. A missing passage narrows from 10 lines to 3. Knowledge advances by small repairs. No trumpet sounds. No hidden planet appears. A broken hymn becomes slightly more complete, and one divine title gains a clearer context. This modest progress may feel unsatisfying beside grand theories, yet it respects the people who wrote the texts by allowing their language to remain ancient. Their world was not a badly remembered version of the modern world. It possessed its own categories. Gods could be present through statues, storms, dreams, the stars, and sacred authority. Myth could describe reality without serving as literal history. Ritual could be practical and symbolic together. The Anunnaki belong within that world. They appear as divine powers whose collective identity changes across traditions. They participate in assemblies, judgment, cosmic hierarchy, and the ordering of sacred space. The tablets support these broad conclusions. They do not support one unified biography describing their planet, technology, mission, or biological program. Absence must remain absence. Still, the incomplete record leaves room for caution. New tablets may be excavated. Unpublished fragments may clarify obscure passages. Better readings may revise long-accepted translations. Scholarship remains unfinished. That unfinished quality should not become permission for unlimited invention. A gap invites a question, not any answer. You look down at the clay beneath the lamp. Its surface preserves a few dozen signs. The edges are broken. The scribe's hand remains visible within the pressure of each wedge. What survives is precious. what is missing is enormous. Between those two realities, responsible history learns to speak softly. It distinguishes the ancient sentence from the modern edition and allows uncertainty to remain where certainty has not been earned. The tablet does not reveal everything. It reveals enough to make invention unnecessary. Wax smoke curls beneath the ceiling of a council chamber, carrying the faint scent of cedar and warm wool. You stand near the wall while elders, priests, landholders, and officials arrange themselves according to rank. No painted line marks their positions, yet everyone understands where to sit. Order has entered the body. A servant lowers his eyes. A scribe waits for permission to speak. A powerful household head receives water before anyone beneath his station. The arrangement feels natural because it has been repeated since childhood. Yet hierarchy is never entirely natural. It must be taught, performed, recorded, and defended. People must learn who commands, who serves, who owns, who owes, and whose suffering receives attention. Mesopotamian creation stories provide one answer. Human beings exist to labor within a divine order. The gods possess higher rank because they existed first, hold greater power, and established the structure of the world. Human society reflects that sacred pattern. Kings rule beneath divine approval. Priests guard ritual knowledge. Officials manage land, goods, and labor. Workers maintain the institutions supporting everyone above them. The arrangement resembles a descending staircase. Each level receives commands from higher powers and passes obligations downward. Authority becomes difficult to challenge because it appears woven into creation itself. A worker does not merely disobey an overseer. He risks disturbing cosmic order. This connection between religion and hierarchy appears clearly within royal inscriptions and legal traditions. Researchers associated with Yale University and the University of Chicago have shown how rulers describe themselves as shepherds chosen to establish justice. The image sounds gentle. A shepherd protects the flock, guides it towards the water, and defends it against danger. Yet he also owns its movement, separates animals, and decides when their usefulness ends. Political language often prefers soft clothing. Kings promise justice because injustice threatens stability. They cancel certain debts, punish dishonest officials, protect vulnerable people, and restore temples damaged by neglect. Such actions may provide real relief. They also announce that justice descends from the ruler rather than rising from the community. Mercy becomes proof of royal greatness. The system creates the wound and praises the bandage. You hear a legal dispute concerning a field boundary. Two families present witnesses. A scribe reads an older agreement while officials examine seals impressed upon clay. The case appears practical. Yet divine names stand behind the procedure. Oaths invoke gods who punish false testimony. Curses threaten anyone who moves boundary stones or alters recorded terms. Property becomes sacred. A field does not belong to someone merely because neighbors accept the claim. Divine witnesses appear to defend the arrangement, even when those witnesses never walk among the irrigation channels. The invisible world strengthens visible ownership. Temples and palaces can control extensive estates, while dependent workers receive rations for assigned labor. Debt may force families to surrender land, children, or years of service. Records from several Mesopotamian periods confirm that debt servitude created serious social pressure. Rulers occasionally issued proclamations cancelling certain obligations and restoring people to their households. These acts were celebrated as justice. They also reveal how quickly inequality could become dangerous. A society cannot function when too many farmers lose their fields or when powerful creditors gather excessive control. Royal intervention protects ordinary families, but it also protects the political system from collapse. Compassion and calculation share the decree. Scholars continued debating how deeply creation myths shaped daily obedience. Some historians view them as ideological tools supporting institutional power. Others argue that ordinary people understood sacred stories in varied ways, using them for comfort, criticism, humor, and personal devotion. The evidence supports no single audience response. A hymn praised inside a palace may sound different inside a worker's home. A story explaining human labour might justify authority, yet listeners could still notice the gods avoiding their own burdens. Sacred literature does not control interpretation completely. People whisper, they joke, they complain about supervisors, hide portions of grain, delay obligations, or appeal to another official when authority becomes unbearable. Resistance survives inside the system. Administrative tablets occasionally record missing workers, escape dependents, disputed deliveries, and unfulfilled duties. These brief entries reveal lives refusing perfect obedience. The official archive calls them problems. You may call them human beings. A curious fringe claim suggests that ancient rulers possessed secret knowledge allowing them to control human minds through sound, ritual, or celestial frequencies. No reliable evidence supports such machinery, yet ritual certainly shapes emotion. Drums coordinate crowds, processions direct attention, repeated chants create shared rhythm, while monumental spaces make individuals feel small. Control does not require invisible waves. It requires symbols, repetition, architecture, and consequences. A coronation teaches who stands nearest the divine statue. A public punishment teaches what disobedience costs. A festival reminds the crowd that prosperity flows through sacred institutions. The city becomes a classroom. Its walls, gates, statues, and ceremonies repeat the same lesson. Order exists because gods established it. Rulers protect it, and everyone else must maintain it. The lesson is powerful because it contains truth. Cooperation really is necessary. Canals require shared labour. Walls require organised repair. Grain stores require accurate records. Without coordination, the city suffers. The question concerns who controls that coordination and who benefits most from it. Perhaps the Anunnaki Blueprint lies here, not within hidden biological instructions, but within a story describing humanity as created for service. Once that story enters institutions, labour becomes destiny. The worker is no longer merely poor. He fulfills the purpose assigned to his species. Such a belief can provide dignity. Daily work becomes sacred, and even unnoticed effort supports the universe. Yet dignity can become a chain. When suffering is described as duty, protest appears selfish. When hierarchy mirrors heaven, equality appears unnatural. The divine order protects earthly privilege. You pass through a doorway into a smaller chamber where tablets record offerings, land grants, and labour assignments. Shelves preserve the memory of obligation. Writing makes hierarchy durable. A spoken command disappears unless remembered. A written command can cross distance, survive death, and bind people who never heard the original voice. The tablet gives power a longer life. It can preserve a worker's debt after the lender dies. It can confirm a family's land claim across generations. It can transform temporary authority into inherited structure. Records do not favour only rulers. They can protect widows, merchants, tenants, and adopted children by preserving agreements against stronger opponents. Writing remains double-edged. It can defend the weak. It can also organise their dependents with remarkable efficiency. This tension appears throughout civilization. Every system created for order can become an instrument of control. Every rule protecting fairness can be manipulated by those who interpret it. Ancient institutions understood this problem without solving it. Legal texts condemn corrupt judges. Wisdom literature warns rulers against arrogance. Prayers ask gods to notice those crushed by injustice. The criticism exists because the injustice exists. A king praises himself as protector of the poor precisely because poverty threatens his claim to moral authority. Perhaps the most revealing stories are not those describing perfect obedience. They are the laments, petitions, and complaints showing people struggling beneath the structure. A widow seeks judgment, a debtor begs for relief, A worker fears losing his ration. Their voices remain faint. Royal monuments speak loudly because rulers possess stone, scribes, and public space. Ordinary people survive through accidental records, private letters, and small legal disputes. History often inherits the voice of authority. You must listen carefully for everyone beneath it. The chamber grows darker as officials finish their meeting. Decisions have been recorded. Seals press authority into wet clay. Servants clear cups and fold textiles. The powerful depart through the broad doorway. Others remain to carry tablets, extinguish lamps, and prepare the room for another gathering. The structure continues because many people perform it. Perhaps no ruler fully controls the system. He depends upon priests, scribes, soldiers, workers, merchants, and families who cooperate for different reasons. Some believe, some fear, some benefit, some simply need tomorrow's ration. The blueprint survives through this mixture, never entirely forced and never entirely chosen. It lives inside habits repeated until they seem older than human memory. Outside, the city settles beneath a silent sky. Its hierarchy appears permanent. Yet every order made by people can be remade by people, even when the gods are said to have designed it. A dry wind moves across the northern hills, bending pale grass around the ruins of an abandoned settlement. You walk beside a broken wall built from stones gathered by people who arrived from somewhere else. Their houses face unfamiliar weather. Their pottery carries patterns learned beside another river, beneath another sea and the sky. Migration leaves quiet evidence. Families carry seeds, tools, songs, recipes, burial customs, and stories about the lands they lost. They also carry memories of strangers encountered along the road. Some strangers become enemies, others become ancestors, teachers, protectors, or beings whose knowledge appears greater than ordinary human understanding. Over generations, the difference between a remarkable person and a divine figure can become difficult to measure. Perhaps the Anunnaki contain such memories. They may preserve echoes of powerful groups whose names, languages, and political identities faded while their authority remained inside sacred tradition. This possibility does not require visitors from another planet. Human communities can appear almost supernatural to one another when their technologies, clothing, customs, or political organization differ sharply. A mountain people skilled in metalworking may seem mysterious to farmers living far from copper sources. Sailors arriving with rare timber and polished stone may appear connected with unreachable worlds. Knowledge creates distance. Distance creates wonder. Archaeological research from the University of Pennsylvania and Oxford University confirms that Mesopotamia belonged to wide networks of migration and exchange. People, animals, raw materials, and ideas moved between river plains, mountains, deserts, and coastal settlements. Southern cities depended upon distant regions. They needed timber from forested highlands, metals from mountains, and stones unavailable within the mud-rich plain. Every imported object carried a human journey. A block of dark stone might pass through many hands, crossing languages and political boundaries before reaching a temple workshop. By the time it arrived, its place of origin could feel almost mythical. The traders knew the route. Most citizens did not. For them, rare materials came from distant lands described through rumour, royal boasting, and sacred geography. Foreign places became enchanted. Mountains could appear as homes of gods because they rose beyond the flat horizon with overwhelming force. Islands could become lands of immortality because few people returned with reliable descriptions. Geography blurred into theology. You hear pack animals moving along a narrow pass. Bronze bells knock softly against leather straps. Merchants exchange cautious greetings with villagers who study their clothing and weapons. Neither group understands everything the other says. Gestures replace language. A shared meal creates temporary trust. A polished blade inspires admiration. A strange ritual inspires discomfort. Years later, the encounter becomes a story. The travellers grow taller with each retelling. Their metal shines more brightly. Their leaders possess longer lives and deeper wisdom. Human memory favours significance over proportion. A respected chief may become the child of a god, a foreign priest may become a divine messenger. A conquering elite may later appear as beings who descended from heaven. Political power encourages this transformation. Rulers often claim unusual ancestry because ordinary birth provides insufficient grandeur. A dynasty connected with gods, heroes, or remote lands gains authority through distance. The stranger becomes sacred. Inherited authority may therefore lie beneath stories of divine descent. A ruling family remembers foreign origins, then reshapes those origins into a heavenly genealogy. The process can occur gradually. Children hear that their ancestors came from beyond the mountains. Their grandchildren hear that those ancestors came from the edge of the world. Later scribes place them among divine beings. The original migration disappears, but the structure remains. Someone arrived. Someone possessed authority. Someone changed the order of society. This pattern appears across many cultures, though each tradition gives it different names and forms. Scholars continue debating how much historical memory survives inside mythology. Some historians believe myths can preserve distorted accounts of migration, conflict, environmental crisis, and political change. Others warn that symbolic stories cannot be converted directly into historical reports. Similar themes may emerge from shared human concerns rather than one forgotten event. Both cautions matter. Myth can remember without recording. It may preserve fear more clearly than dates. It may retain the direction of a journey while losing the names of those who travelled. A story about divine beings arriving from the highlands might echo real movement, yet no surviving line allows a confident reconstruction. Possibility must remain gentle. You descend toward a dry river channel where cracked mud curls beneath the sun. Once, water may have moved here through fields and reed beds. Now, dust gathers inside the old course. Environmental change can transform memory quickly. A river shifts, and a city loses access to trade. Soil grows salty, and harvests weaken. Marshes expand, then retreat. Families leave slowly at first. One household departs after a failed crop, another follows when wells become unreliable. Temples lose workers, markets shrink, and streets begin collecting sand. Later generations remember abandonment as judgment. The god withdrew protection. The city broke a sacred rule. Divine beings decided that kingship must move elsewhere. Such explanations give intention to environmental change. A river does not hate a city, but a story can describe loss through anger, punishment, and withdrawal. Meaning enters the empty channel. Research connected with the University of Chicago has shown how shifting waterways shaped settlement patterns across ancient Mesopotamia. Cities flourished near active channels and declined when water access changed. This process could unfold through nature, human management, conflict, or several causes together. To those living through it, the result felt personal. Their homes failed. Their gods seemed silent. Their ancestors lay buried in land they could no longer inhabit. Migration then carried sacred memory towards another place. Refugees brought statues, rituals, names, and stories into new communities. Local traditions mixed with imported ones. A foreign deity could join an existing divine family. An ancestral figure could receive a new title. A memory of political defeat could become a story about cosmic judgment. Religion absorbed displacement. One quirky theory proposes that the Anunnaki were memories of an isolated human population possessing unusual physical traits. Supporters imagine a taller or longer-lived group, whose appearance inspired divine legends. No archaeological evidence confirms such a separate people. Human remains from Mesopotamia reveal normal variation, not a hidden species ruling early cities. Still, the theory touches a genuine truth about perception. Strangers often appear physically exaggerated within storytelling. Enemies become enormous. Ancestors become beautiful. Wise rulers become radiant. Difference grows through memory until ordinary bodies no longer seem sufficient. You enter a village at dusk where travelers sit beside a fire and describe a distant city. They speak of walls wider than the roads, temples touching the stars, and rulers served by countless workers. Their listeners have never seen a large city. The description feels impossible. A real urban centre can sound supernatural to people from smaller communities. Massive buildings, organised ceremonies, and unfamiliar writing create an impression of power beyond ordinary life. Perhaps encounters like these shape stories of more than human beings. The Anunnaki may contain memories of institutions rather than individuals. A divine assembly could reflect distant courts whose authority reached villages through officials, taxes, and military force. People rarely saw the highest rulers. They encountered messengers. Orders arrived bearing seals, tribute departed towards cities hidden beyond the horizon. Invisible authority resembles divine authority. A farmer obeys a command issued by someone he will never meet. The ruler's face appears only upon an image. His decisions alter fields, marriages, labour, and survival. He exists everywhere and nowhere. Over time, political distance can become sacred distance. Yet the myth remains larger than any single explanation. It gathers migration, environmental loss, inherited rank, foreign knowledge, and the mystery of vanished peoples into one flexible structure. The Anunnaki stand within that structure as powers connected with ancestry and order. Perhaps they preserve no historical group at all. Perhaps they preserve many. A merchant, conqueror, priest, displaced ruler, and forgotten ancestor may all contribute something to the divine image. Stories to collect fragments. They smooth contradictions and preserve emotional patterns long after events disappear. Night spreads across the abandoned settlement. The stones cool beneath your hand, holding no inscription that explains why the people left. A broken jar rests near the wall. Its clay came from local soil, but its painted design arrived through distant influence. Even this small object contains movement, contact, and memory. Human history is rarely pure. Cultures meet, separate, merge, and rename what they inherit. Gods travel with people, then change their clothing within new cities. The Anunnaki may be part of that long migration of meaning. Not visitors descending from another world, but ancient authority passing through human memory until its original face becomes impossible to recover. The wind crosses the empty houses. Somewhere beneath the dust lies evidence of ordinary departures, forgotten encounters, and stories carried towards cities that still possessed light. A museum gallery rests in darkness long after the final visitor has stepped into the rain. You stand alone beside a glass case where several clay tablets lie beneath a low amber light. They seem almost weightless within the silence, though each one has carried human questions across thousands of years. Their surfaces remain scarred. Some signs are sharp enough to catch a shadow, others fade into cracks, mineral stains, and missing corners. A single fragment may preserve the ending of a prayer, the middle of a royal name, or half a sentence concerning divine judgment. The rest is gone. You cannot know whether the missing lines contained something astonishing or something entirely ordinary. Perhaps they described a ritual payment, a family dispute, or another list of barley portions. Mystery does not guarantee revelation. That quiet fact is easy to forget when broken evidence meets a hopeful imagination. An empty space can hold any answer until another fragment closes it. The Anunnaki remain within such spaces. Their name survives clearly enough to confirm their place inside Mesopotamian religion. They belong among divine assemblies, sacred genealogies, cosmic decisions, and traditions concerning judgment. Yet no complete biography waits beneath the dust. They do not step forward as one united group with a single mission. Their identities shift because ancient cities preserved different traditions, and later scribes rearranged inherited ideas. The evidence resists one final portrait. You move closer to the glass. The tablet appears small beside your reflection. Your face hovers above the signs, joining the modern observer with the ancient hand that formed them. This meeting is uneven. The scribe knew his language, ritual setting, divine names, and local traditions. You possess museums, dictionaries, archaeology, and tools capable of examining marks invisible to the unaided eyes. Still, neither world holds everything. Modern researchers can study clay composition, trace excavation records, and compare copies scattered across international collections. Digital photography can reveal shallow wedges hidden beneath damaged surfaces. Careful imaging sometimes restores a sign. A newly joined fragment can recover a sentence lost for generations. Scholars at Oxford University, Yale University, and the University of Chicago continue refining readings through comparison and linguistic study. The work advances patiently, yet every recovered line may open another uncertainty. A divine title gains a clearer spelling, but its ritual meaning remains disputed. A myth becomes longer, while its original date moves farther into question. Knowledge expands alongside mystery. Archaeology confirms that Mesopotamian civilization developed through long human processes involving settlement, irrigation, trade, writing, labour, and political change. No physical evidence reveals an advanced extraterrestrial industry operating beneath the temples. That conclusion is strong. It does not make ancient achievement less remarkable. It returns the achievement to people whose intelligence has often been underestimated because their tools seem simple beside modern machinery. Mud brick can build a city. A reed can preserve lore. A disciplined archive can speak across 4,000 years. These truths are extraordinary without requiring hidden engines. Still, a fringe belief imagines that a sealed chamber remains undiscovered beneath an ancient sanctuary. Within it, supporters hope for metal instruments, celestial maps, or records explaining humanity's artificial creation. No such chamber has been found. The idea survives because archaeology is unfinished. Large portions of ancient settlements remain unexcavated, and countless tablets probably still rest beneath collapsed rooms. Possibility creates emotional space. A buried archive may indeed transform scholarly understanding. It could preserve new hymns, unknown rulers, private letters, or a different version of creation. It might even alter how the Anunnaki are understood. Yet a future discovery cannot serve as evidence in the present. Hope is not an artifact, however beautifully it is described. You hear the building settle around you. Metal contracts faintly inside the display case. Air moves through the hidden vents. The tablets remain still beneath controlled temperature and filtered light. Their survival depends upon modern ritual now. Curators measure humidity, conservators stabilize cracked surfaces, catalogers assign numbers, record dimensions, and trace ownership histories. The museum becomes another sacred institution. Objects enter restricted rooms. Specialists interpret them. Visitors approach quietly and trust labels written by people they will never meet. The resemblance deserves attention. Modern knowledge also possesses ranks, procedures, approved language, and guarded storage. Expertise is necessary, yet institutions remain human and therefore imperfect. Scholars can disagree. Museums can inherit objects through colonial extraction, uncertain purchases, or excavations shaped by unequal power. Catalogues may preserve old errors beside genuine discoveries. Authority requires examination, even when it is responsible. The open debate reaches beyond translation. Researchers question how ancient artifacts should be displayed, who should control them, and whether objects removed during imperial expansion should return to their places of origin. The tablet carries more than ancient history. It also carries the history of discovery, possession, classification, and modern desire. Its journey from buried room to museum case becomes another layer of meaning. Nothing remains untouched. Even your gaze changes the stare. You arrive with expectations formed by films, religious traditions, technological fears, and the hope that human history contains a hidden door. You may want the Anunnaki to be visitors. You may want them to be symbols. You may want them to expose a forgotten ruling system. or confirm that intelligence entered humanity from somewhere beyond the Earth. Desire does not make these ideas foolish. It makes them human. People search for origins because origin stories explain present discomfort. If humanity was designed for labor, exploitation feels ancient. If the gods granted civilization, knowledge appears borrowed. If history moves through cycles, collapse becomes familiar. Each interpretation offers a pattern large enough to contain confusion. The blueprint becomes attractive because random suffering feels colder than purposeful design. Yet purpose can also frighten. A designed species may possess no freedom beyond its assigned function. A divinely ordered society may turn hierarchy into destiny. A hidden plan can comfort you while quietly closing the door. Perhaps no single blueprint exists. Humanity may carry many designs layered together through biology, culture, memory, environment, and power. The body inherits ancient evolution. The mind inherits language. Society inherits institutions built by forgotten generations. Myth gathers these inheritances and gives them faces. The Anunnaki may represent divine ancestry, solemn authority, underworld judgment, or the sacred weight of systems older than any individual. Their changing roles may be the message. Human beings rarely receive one fixed purpose. They are farmers, servants, rulers, parents, mourners, builders, destroyers, and storytellers. Every age rearranges those roles. The gods change beside them. You sense a final scholarly uncertainty resting beneath the confident museum label. Specialists can describe how the name appears, where certain texts were found, and how traditions changed. They cannot recover every ancient belief. A priest and a farmer may have understood the same hymn differently. A child may have feared a divine name that a scholar treated as classification. Private faith leaves little evidence. The written record belongs mostly to trained elites, temples, courts, and institutions wealthy enough to preserve clay archives. Silence surrounds everyone else. Their thoughts are not absent because they lack them. Their thoughts are absent because history preserves material unevenly. This may be the deepest hidden timeline, not an age of advanced beings, but an immeasurable population of ordinary people whose lives supported civilization while their voices disappeared. They carried bricks, they planted barley, they buried children, repaired roofs, told jokes, feared illness, and watched stars above the canals. Their labor created the world later attributed to kings and gods. Perhaps the blueprint was always theirs. Not a plan imposed from heaven, but a pattern emerging through cooperation, obedience, resistance, memory, and need. No one designed the whole system. Everyone must help to continue it. That possibility feels less dramatic than celestial intervention, yet more unsettling. It suggests that vast structures can arise without one controlling mind. Institutions gather momentum. Stories justify them. Generations inherit arrangements they did not choose, then call those arrangements ancient, natural, or sacred. The gods become witnesses. The tablets become proof. The system continues. You step away from the glass, and your reflection fades from the clay. The signs remain beneath the amber light, patient and incomplete. No final voice rises from them. No hidden law explains why humanity exists. There is only earth shaped by hands, marked with language, broken by time, and read by people still searching for their place within the pattern. Perhaps the Anunnaki never held one secret capable of rewriting all human history. Perhaps their power rests within the questions gathering around their name. They remind you that history is reconstructed from fragments, and every reconstruction contains the desires of the person assembling it. Certainty becomes softer here. The gallery stretches into darkness, and the tablets seem to recede with every quiet breath. Let your shoulders loosen. Now, the museum walls begin to dissolve within the stillness of your room. The amber lights grow dimmer. becoming small stars above a plain where reeds move gently beside black water. Nothing follows you from the darkness. The ancient names remain where they belong, resting among broken temples, lost languages, and clay returned slowly toward earth. You do not need to solve them tonight. The rivers continue beneath moonlight. Cool water touches the edges of silent fields, carrying reflections that tremble and gather again. A distant lamp glows inside a reed house. Someone presses a final sign into soft clay, then places the tablet beside the wall. His work is finished for the evening. He stretches his tired fingers. Outside, cattle settle near the enclosure. A soft breeze moves through date palms, carrying the scent of mud, grain, and faint wood smoke. The city breathes around him. Its walls will fall, its rulers will vanish, its gods will change their names and places within memory. Yet this moment remains gentle. You stand beneath the same patient sky, separated by centuries that now feel thinner than sleep. Questions can rest without answers. Mysteries can remain unopened. The mind does not need to force every fragment into one complete design. Perhaps history is not a locked chamber waiting for the correct key. Perhaps it is a field of scattered lights, each one revealing only the ground nearby. You may walk between them slowly. You may leave some darkness untouched. The clay cools beneath the night air. The river continues beyond the houses, calm and almost invisible. Your breathing follows its quiet rhythm. Thoughts loosen. Names fade. The final tablet rests beneath dust, holding a sentence whose ending has never been found. And perhaps the story is not yet complete. Good night.